Keep the energy level up. Boop, 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 boop.
Is there a
All right, everyone, just like Thomas said, get your energy bars ready, get your energy drinks ready, slam your coffee, inject it into your veins. We are back with another live stream, and we are ready to go. Today's topic, proposition, the Bible condones slavery. What? I thought the Bible was the good book. Well, we're going to investigate that today. Does the Bible condone slavery? What do you believe? I'm going to leave this, I'm going to leave a little invite link for you guys in the YouTube chat. And I'm so glad to be with you again, and so glad to be with all the beautiful people here at Pangburn, especially my dear friend Thomas and everyone else here. Thomas gets a special call out because he's got his video up, and the rest of you guys don't, including you, Niv. You've never been on video. Anyways.
Hey. I'm here with my brother.
No one wants to see that.
I want to see that. I would pay ridiculous money.
If I had a lot of money, I would give Nivik like $100,000 to see his face.
At this point, like, we actually had a pool going one night.
Well, Bruce was drunk.
I'm very ugly.
You're so elusive. Bruce was drunk as dog shit though when he did that, right?
Oh yeah, a few of us were drinking. And we were like, okay, we're ready to throw money at this. And I think we got it up to like $5,000. And Niv still would not turn on his camera.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
Not only would I turn my camera on, I would come all the way to where you were.
Like, I will do anything.
One way or another.
And I think we got it up to like $5,000.
I'm gonna get you.
Pay
for 500. I won't turn mine on.
That's what the FBI, why make the FBI job easier by showing your face,
Well, but I think it's the reverse. I think Niv is quite obviously an FBI agent, so he can't show his face in the Penguin community.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, well, you're right, sir. Anyways,
I think you're right, Wise Ape. I think he's deep cover CIA.
Very, very contentious topic today. As per usual, I'm going to do a bit of reading just to get our juices flowing for this evening. So yeah, we're dealing with the proposition, the claim that the Bible condones slavery. What do you guys think? Does the Bible condone slavery? What? No way, man. Well, let's have a look. The Bible contains passages that address slavery, but interpreting these passages depends on historical, cultural, and theological context. It's true that both the Old and New Testaments include laws and guidelines about slavery, which can seem to condone the practice by modern standards. The Old Testament, regulation of slavery. The Old Testament, particularly in books like Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, provides detailed instructions on the treatment of slaves. For instance, Hebrews could sell themselves into slavery to pay debts, but were to be freed after 6 years. Exodus 21:2. Foreign slaves could be held as property for life. Leviticus 25:44 through 46. There were rules.
Matt, interrupt you here for just a second. I think it would do well to read Leviticus 25.
Oh, we're gonna do that. We're gonna go jump right to there.
Okay.
But that's Old Testament.
We'll get there. There were rules about how slaves could be treated, including punishments for mistreatments. Exodus 21:20 through 21. The New Testament, acknowledgement of slavery. In the Roman Empire, slavery was widespread. The New Testament does not explicitly condemn slavery, but contains passages that address relationships between masters and slaves. Slaves are instructed to obey their masters. Ephesians 6:5 through 8. Colossians. I think it's Colossians, right?
Colossians.
Okay, Colossians 3:22 through 25. Masters are told to treat their slaves fairly and justly. Colossians 4:1. Paul, in his letters to Philemon, asked for a slave, Onesimus, to be received back as a brother in Christ, reflecting a more humane perspective. Philemon 1:15 through 16. So the modern ethical implications, we'll open it up in a second, guys. 2 seconds. The presence of slavery in the Bible has had a significant point of contention. While some have used the text to critique biblical morality, others focus on interpreting them in the context of human progress in changing ethical standards. So we're going to look at particular verses quickly here, and everyone can look up their own verses and evidence that they might have to demonstrate the claim today or to combat it. So Leviticus 25:44-46 reads, "Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you, and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly." This passage explicitly permits the ownership of slaves from foreign nations and treats them as property. Exodus 21:2-6. "If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year, he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife, when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free." Yikes. This passage sets terms for Hebrew slavery, but also includes rules that could effectively coerce slaves into lifelong servitude if they wish to stay with their family. Exodus 21:20-21. "If a man beats his male or female slave with a rod, and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished." Well, no shit. But he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. The verse treats slaves as property and allows physical discipline as long as it doesn't result in death. Deuteronomy 20:10-11 and 14. "When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves." This passage describes the enslavement of conquered peoples as spoils of war. Okay, now on to the New Testament. Ephesians 6:5. "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ." Paul instructs slaves to obey their masters, framing it as an act of devotion to God. Colossians 3:22, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you, and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord." Similar to Ephesians, the verse encourages slaves to obey their masters wholeheartedly. 1 Timothy 6:1-2, "All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Those who have believing masters should not show them disrespect just because they are fellow believers. Instead, they should serve them even better because their masters are dear to them as fellow believers and are devoted to the welfare of their slaves." What a horrible run-on sentence. This verse encourages slaves to respect their masters, including Christian masters, without suggesting an end to slavery. Titus 2:9-10. "Teach slaves to be subject to their masters in everything." Really? Everything? "To try to please them, not to talk back to them, and not to steal from them, but to show that they can be fully trusted, so that in every way they will make the teaching about God our Savior attractive." Instructions for slaves to behave submissively and respectfully to make the faith appealing. Yeah, so the Bible condones slavery. Does anyone have a problem with that claim?
Did you miss one?
If I may, I don't have a problem with that claim now. But I will say that once upon a time, I would have had a problem with that claim because I did not have a better understanding of problems of translation. Because in the KJV, which is what the church I was raised in uses, it doesn't use the term slave very often. It does in a few places, but it generally uses the term servant. And even in the context of church, and even in scholarship, like seminary and things like that, I was taught.
In Leviticus, though, I think it specifically I think it says slave in Leviticus. Does it not?
Let's have
I don't think it says that I think it says servant in the KJV.
I think it's slaves.
So, what's your point with servant? I'm not.
Nivik, slow down.
Point being is that I did not have the understanding that was slave at the time.
Right.
That they were talking about servants, which again, still not great, but I'm thinking more in
you
downtown
were thinking
Downton Abbey.
Yeah, you were thinking
indentured or medieval serf or something along those lines. I wasn't thinking in terms of slave.
That may have been okay. That may have been true for some things that are said in Exodus 21, but the Leviticus one is pretty cut and dry. It's talking about chattel slavery,
and I think
same kind that you would have had in America in the 1800s.
Yeah, and I think TiVo was
and so anyway
that's kind of maybe an update.
I'm just saying, I would understand if there are people who are under the same kind of understanding of the Bible that I once had.
That you once had.
What you're saying is they hide it from a lot of Christians because they put that servant translation in there, but they're not talking about the food industry or serving and governing, right? That when they use servant, it was just to disguise the slave, right?
And that to disguise the slave, but also it was. To the extent that it was relevant to the present at all, it would have been more like be a good employee, not just a general spirit of just be a good employee, don't be a bad employee. That would have been the most that it would have ever come up.
Yeah, so the indentured servitude apologetic is the most common one I hear, where it's this happens all through history. There are servants, and it's a job, and you get things in return for it, and stuff like that. But as I just read, when you read it when you read it all through, what's actually said. Now, some people are going to argue that no, that's within the context of the age. I don't care what the context is. By my own moral standards, owning individuals as property is immoral. You don't own your own children as your own property.
Correct.
The government, for good reason, the government can come in and take your children away if you're a piece of shit parent. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And I'm glad I live in such a culture.
Not to sound too brash or anything, but also slavery, maybe it was a custom of the day, but it was not a universal custom.
Right.
And so if we look at why not take parallels when people talk about Enlightenment thinking, Westernism, a lot of good stuff that came from it, but a lot of times I've seen, and I don't have sources, but people talked about slavery, what are the ethics of a slave? And therefore, what are the ethics of a slaveholder? And it was still saying that there's almost this bundle of what these people are or what these people have to be that's not as good as someone else. So it's it's different, and it's maybe talking adding complexity to it or something, which I don't know. Maybe God wants humans to do that or something, but that was just all I wanted to say.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Nate. And
I think even if we substitute slave with servant, or what was the other one, employee, we can reread these passages that Travis read and see, oh, well, when you beat them, like there's, even if it is a servant or they call it a person, it talks about how to not kill them but beat them, and if they rise the day after, something ridiculous that my unconscious.
And like your employees,
slow down, Wes. If they beat you within a couple of days and you don't die, you're not to go punished. But if he does die, then you are to be punished.
Yeah.
So even if we call these guys servants, like it doesn't matter. The behavior is ridiculous.
And also, I was just going to say that there's also no abolishment of Exodus 21 in the New Testament. The New Testament buttresses the idea of slavery. There's no eradication of it. There's no softening of it. It's just maintained and reminded.
May I ask that Nivik have a chance?
Yeah, Niv, go ahead.
Yeah, Nivik, please go ahead.
Bless you, whoever sneezed.
I think you, Barry.
No, I didn't have anything.
Yeah, guys.
Imagine the verse about if you substitute employee for slave, that says that you can keep your employee's wife and their child, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It doesn't matter what synonym we use. It's abhorrent behavior that we're talking about.
I'm just saying my understanding of it was
right
was muddied.
Yeah.
The understanding of it was muddied at the time, and
you were conned.
Yes.
Could you chat GPT, Travis, if there's any versions of the Bible that actually use the word servant? Is that an easy question to ask?
Yeah. So servant. So I already know that servant and slave is used somewhat interchangeably in the Old Testament, and my understanding is that in the New Testament, based on what I have here, slave is used to describe people.
I know the New Testament was written in Greek. I think also some parts of it Aramaic, but the Old Testament is like, what would that be? Rabbinical? I don't even know. Don, what would it be?
What?
Like, what was the Torah written in? What language?
The same language that it used to refer to the Israelites in Egypt, it would refer to the people you could have as slaves. Avadim. You could have them. You could have Jewish ones, and you could have Christian Goyim ones. The ones that were Jewish had specific set of rules. The ones who were non-Jewish, make up your mind that you can own them, own their children, etc., etc.
Yeah. So biblical Hebrew and biblical Aramaic is what we're looking at.
And I would also just bring up, from a Mormon perspective, our understanding of the law of Moses, not to get too much into the weeds of theology, but was considered the lesser law, or a more baser law.
Did you say the lesser law? Is that what you said?
The lesser law. Yes, is a term that would be used in Mormon theology. It's the lesser law. So basically, it's not the higher law. It's not the, shall we say, in a more secular way, it's not the better law. It's the worser law.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about like base human nature kind of thing, like base laws like that.
Yes, that basically again, not to, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds, but like the idea that was that Moses was initially given the higher law on Sinai, and then when he came down and saw the state of the people and everything and destroyed the first tablets that God gave him, he went back up and God gave him the lesser law instead, because this would be easier for people to actually deal with.
I wonder what the higher law was. Now I'm curious, God.
Yeah,
the higher law would be what Mormonism teaches now.
Yeah, and my question,
of course.
Yeah, my question to Christians always is like, under what context, like in what way is it ever okay for a person to own another person as property and trade them around beat them, and they're not allowed to die, or they're not allowed to die within the next couple days from the beating. Like in what way can we justify this? The only response I ever get is that, well, that's just what God wants. That's just part of God's design and plan. And to me, that's no sufficient justification at all. It's not good. It's actually bad, and it's wrong. And that's just me, some dumb ape, coming to that conclusion when apparently this is supposed to be some like sacred, beautiful,
esoteric,
piece of literature, like Jordan Peterson describes scripture, and you can read all this beauty, take all this beauty from it, and that's like. But if you look at stuff like this is just obviously like, did you hear those run-on sentences? Like this wasn't even written by someone with half a brain, like maybe a quarter brain, but it's just someone just jotting down some like, oh yeah, this is what I want, this is how I want to treat other people. Like,
I think one of the worst.
To be fair, in Hebrew, it is pretty nice. It is written really beautifully in Hebrew. I don't know how it works in English. Like, it repeating itself is considered a nice thing, that it says things in two different ways consistently.
But how does but in Hebrew, like for instance, like we're talking about, let me pull up right here.
You're probably still talking about a run-on sentence.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about like how does like if a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished, but he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. If that's actually what's in the Hebrew text, I don't see how that can sound beautiful.
And that is because
the language is conjugated differently, and like the way in which the words are in order, it's just different. It's just a different language.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same meaning, right?
I think that's the same meaning. That's exactly it. I think Don's saying it's not necessarily the meaning, but perhaps the linguistic structure.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay,
meaning-wise, it's garbage.
Just like the sound, the way it flows.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about like the aesthetic quality of how that idea sounds to the ear, as opposed to
no. Like I could make a haiku.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
I
was gonna say haiku, or
I was gonna make a haiku.
In English sound like
In Hebrew, it sounds like bros before hoes.
I don't know.
Possibly.
Right? It just sounds bros before hoes, man.
It sounds like if the master gives the slave children, then he pretty much got him. Like, what's the guy gonna do? I think somewhere in there it also says that if the slave after the seventh year wants to leave, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, but they can have a piece of metal bore through their ear, and they can become the master's property forever. That's in there, isn't it?
That is in there.
I just read through all of the common cited pieces in the Old Testament and the New Testament related to this.
This is just
topic.
This is just part of the 613 pieces of law,
right?
But you're correct, Thomas, and that's for a
Travis.
Jewish slave.
Sorry, real quick, Travis.
For a Jewish slave.
Travis, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm an ethical vegan. Sometime tonight, are we going to talk about animal slavery as well? Just because I'm an ethical vegan, so I wanted to do that.
I think we'll say that for another episode. Like, we can do a veganism episode. I think that needs a whole episode in and of itself.
That's probably true.
But yeah, and we can tackle the the proposition of animals as slaves. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
But let's
Thank
not
you.
do it today.
If you guys don't mind, I saw the longest name I could make unmute and then mute again. If you wanted to say something long this name, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just wanted to say, I mean, it would be sweet to have a slave, right? To do all your chores and all that.
No.
But I was thinking, how much is that going to cost me?
No.
Right? Like right now.
So my quick answer to that is no, it would not be sweet to have a slave in any way.
I know. No, it's not. But the cost of this, like, who is this written for? Like, this is not everybody's like going around like owning people, right? Feeding these people, like, hey, do you want a wife? Like, what kind of, who is this for, right?
This stuff was written for Bronze Age Israelites.
Well, apparently this is
wealthy.
Apparently, this is divine. This is divinely inspired text from the God, the creator of everything. That's apparently what this is.
That's what it says.
I wouldn't be shocked if it were the aristocrats and people of the higher echelon who were benefiting from this and perhaps giving influence to the text. That
slave owners benefited from this? What?
Are you kidding me right now? Like, how much do you have to pay a child slave, right? You don't have to be super wealthy to roll over a child and enslave them and make them work for you, right? Or all you got to do is start treating your spouse like a slave, right? That's pretty simple to afford.
A little bit on the authorship, just since we're kind of on that topic, and we can look at what history is telling us thus far, what we know or maybe can ever know. So the Mosaic laws, which is Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, the traditional attribution is Moses, right, for writing the first 5 books of the Bible, known as the Torah, Pentateuch, I believe it is. Including the passage.
Pentateuch in English, Chumash in Hebrew.
What was it? Pentateuch,
which means 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is Chumash in Hebrew, which also means 5.
Yeah, and modern biblical scholars suggest that these books were written and compiled over centuries by multiple authors and redactors. So,
But also the churches, just to add a biblical presence, they were written by different people at different times, and the church has sort of, rolled stuff together and rolled it back. If you're talking about the King James Version, went through the heavy sort of Catholic protectionist process and then came back. But
that's what they mean. I think that's why they say over centuries of multiple authors and redactors. So yeah, you're definitely.
Isn't King James Protestant? Isn't King James Protestant?
I do believe it's the Protestant interpretation.
Was someone else trying?
I would just propose that the Bible is advocating for the everyman to be a master, a slave owner. He's the head of his house, right? So, I mean, you don't have to be entirely wealthy if you adopt this religion, right? Any man can be a master, right?
I'm kind of debating how much I want to engage, because Mormons have a different relationship to the Bible than most Christians do. And so, again, if I was still Mormon, my answer would be that God never condoned slavery. God never wanted slavery. And the only basically, it was a concession to make with stupid apes that were not going to get the message, that weren't going to do any better at the moment.
I would say to your Mormon friends, not you, of course, but your Mormon
Although
friends.
Mormonism has its own fucked up relationship with slavery.
Let's let Thomas finish.
In its history.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot where I was going.
Wait, no, I really want to hear what you're saying. What I would say to your Mormon friends.
Yeah.
About.
Oh, yeah. God damn it. Sorry.
Yeah,
again,
I'm usually good about getting you back on track, but
the topic is, what does the Bible say, right? Not the hermeneutics or whatever people are going to massage it into saying. Like, what does it actually say?
Well, but part of trying to understand whether the Bible condones slavery or not does.
And so
does
that
require
basically
some
that
textual
the
analysis.
Bible.
Evo, you're talking over, man.
Yeah. Sorry.
So yeah, that's okay. So when you're looking at a big body of text like this, and whether or not it condones slavery, there's going to be a lot of textual analysis through history, arguments, some common arguments about what people think from a language perspective, and then from a logic perspective, and all kinds of stuff like that. So it is. I think it is important to think about what people argue and where they're kind of coming from when they try to, apologize away some of these verses as like, oh, that's just humans being, well, are you special pleading? Are you just saying that about this and not other scripture that comes right after it? Or, like, how far are you willing to go? Is it just the stuff you have judged to be like, oh, that just seems like humans doing what humans did at that time, so I'm going to rule that stuff out as just that? Like, I think anyone who's trying to live by the fundamental word of the Bible wouldn't feel so quick to start editing out God's morality as it's written to them. But
that's I remember what I was going to say now.
Yeah, go ahead. Everyone quiet.
I would tell your Mormon friends about basically that when you said what they would said in defense of slavery, you basically would say, I would say, why not have the 11th commandment be, thou shalt not have slaves?
Yeah. Thou shalt.
Well, again, the less higher law, lesser law, like that. Again, I could have done that all day and all night. Just I don't know how much I care to, just because I don't believe in it anymore, and because it really does sound stupid once you get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's but that's a good point, Thomas. It's like
basically you still reach the same conclusion. You just take extra steps.
Yeah.
Does anybody have what methodology would you use to show, like, if there was a story about water, right, and then somebody's interpreted it, and they say, oh, that story's talking about granite, right? How do you easily expose that their textual interpretation or criticism isn't in line?
Yeah,
just read it to them. It's really not that complicated. The Old Testament, especially the chapter that we're talking about, is literally just laws. It's laws about how one should live their life. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
It's not some esoteric
it's not some deep metaphor that like has to be interpreted. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't believe in Kabbalah?
I do. I mean, not only did I study Kabbalah, I studied the Zohar. The Zohar literally tells you these are just laws. There's really not that much esoteric to the Zohar and Kabbalah around those chapters. Even the interpretations of like the great rabbis don't argue that there shouldn't be slaves. Most Orthodox rabbis will tell you that the reason why there isn't slavery today is because there's no Sanhedrin. There isn't a governing political Jewish body because there isn't a creation of the third temple. And since there isn't a third temple, those laws cannot be enforced. This is what most contemporary rabbis will tell you. So it's not like... It's pretty clear cut what it fucking means. I mean,
yeah,
you can have slaves.
Yeah, you can have slaves, and you in fact can own people as property. And some of this disgusting stuff of like, if you're a slave and a woman you give to her bear children, you get to keep that woman and the child. If that slave is traded or goes away, like. It has to do with buying a Hebrew servant. Yeah.
There's parallels in like Hammurabi's code too. Sorry, I know I'm just adding extra references in. I forget exactly what they say about things like slaves, but they talk about weird stuff like if you use the wrong building materials, then you're able to be put to death for using the wrong building materials.
Yikes.
And so like, I don't know, I think they say something about slavery as well, but about like slave master or something, but I don't know. There's every time I sort of think of that kind of stuff, I just don't know.
Every society probably has had some dip into slavery. So.
Yeah, I mean,
we still have slavery today in our modern world, just a different version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean like slavery in the modern world, or you mean slavery as in like legitimate slavery like in the United States?
Well, I mean, like, sure, we can say that we've abolished it and everything, but there's like that one thing where the nonprofit did a thing where basically like you can enter in basically your parameters of your lifestyle. It's like, this is how many slaves in the third world are working to support your lifestyle.
So you're not talking about in the U.S., you're talking about worldwide, right? That's what Don was saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and again, still happens in the U.S. just on the down low and not legally. It's all.
Are you talking about like sex trafficking and things like that?
Yeah, just things. Yeah, things of that nature also occur still in the West.
Yeah,
but there's no sanctioned slavery.
Sure, it's not sanctioned. Okay. It's just, but
So people, so
it's still there.
I think it's important. I think that when we talk about slavery in the world, we're talking about institutions that protect people as property. That doesn't exist in the U.S. People aren't property. And I think it's important to note.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a history.
Again, I wouldn't say it's the exact same as it was, back in the 1800s, but we still contend with it. We just don't think about it very much.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Kahneman, have you heard any smoothing out of, like, as you were a minister? Did you get taught or have anybody try to teach you how to smooth that shit out?
Kahneman's a minister? Oh, that's awesome.
He was.
Kahneman was. But yeah, we were really taught to speak gently to parishioners and the congregation, especially children, about the hard questions of these moral problems within the Bible, slavery especially, because it's very hard for anyone who doesn't have a narcissistic personality or a controlling mind, in my opinion, to understand the ownership of another human being, especially when all they've ever known is to be free and never owned. And so, yeah, they would encourage us, to bleach the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that had to suck.
Bleach it.
Bleach it. No, I just wanted your take on that because you have an interest. You would have. None of us are ministers or have been ministers. I don't think. I'm kind of assuming. Nivik, you haven't been a minister, have you? I'm just kidding. No,
Hell yeah.
Can you think of it? Have you ever heard, Travis, or Perry or anybody, any other arguments to this? Trying to smooth out the whole slavery issue.
I just remember in Catholic school as well, reading, freshman year, we read the Old Testament. I don't know how theological I was at the time, but like one of the things that I remember still is that, like, there's some stories of Hebrew warriors, but that's not, you can easily read the Bible and not take that away. You can take it away that they use basically, God's grace was the thing which kept them together as the tribe of Israel during their slavery in Egypt. And for whatever reason, they were able to use, again, God's grace, God's sort of punishment in the Old Testament sense was the thing that ultimately freed them as well. It wasn't, this great act of rebellion and war as I remember that story.
Yeah, so common apologist arguments are broken down, and there's this common slavery in the Bible is different from modern slavery. So we kind of went through that already with like indentured servitude argument. Apologists will argue regulation, not endorsement, that biblical laws about slavery were meant to regulate on existing institutions, not endorse it. The laws aim to protect slaves from mistreatment and reflect the cultural norms of ancient times.
I answered that with the whole 11th commandment.
Exactly. Regulating an immoral institution without condemning it perpetuates harm and implicitly endorses it is the common rebuttal to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A temporary.
It doesn't seem like there's just like a lot of design behind it. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, that's all right. Love hearing from you, Nate. A temporary culture. A temporary cultural reality. So the argument from apologists being that slavery was a social reality in the ancient Near East and Roman Empire. God worked within the culture norms of the time to gradually lead humanity towards greater morality.
God is so powerful that he has to take the reformist approach.
Why does he have to follow the immoral laws of men to work around in our laws?
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to do that?
I've heard it explained. He's not doing it to gradually work us away from it, but instead it's a warm up, right? It's foreplay. Because if you can adopt these practices, man on man relationships, right, with slavery and servitude, and whatever the master says goes, then that's the relationship ultimately. What the man masters are going to have with God, right, in the next life.
I mean, Paul does write that in the New Testament, more or less.
And the God shows that, like, he can administer whatever type of punishment, great or small, he wants, right?
Yeah.
If you eat of a piece of fruit, you're screwed. But the apologists like to, just say, like, well, he loves us. He loves us.
Well,
most of us are going to burn in hell, but he loves us.
Yeah. George Carlin, salute.
Salute.
God worked. So if God was working with these cultural norms to gradually lead humanity towards a greater morality, what happened in the New Testament?
Yeah.
Like,
slaves, obey your masters, even the cruel ones.
I came here to, I didn't come here to abolish the laws. I came here to,
I came here with a sword. Didn't come here with a, what does he say? Something. I came here with a sword to uphold the laws. I can't remember the whole verse.
Well, here's another one.
What?
Here's another common apologetic. The Bible undermines slavery. So biblical principles and teachings subtly undermine slavery and paved the way for abolition. And they would cite the concept of human dignity as being made in the image of God, Genesis 1:27. They would also say in the New Testament, Paul's letter to Philemon asks for the slave Onesimus to be received as a brother in Christ. That doesn't, to me, that doesn't sound like an leading anyone to abolition.
Unfortunately, the civil rights era and abolition in the United States, the religious people had the Bible on their side. So
exactly, and that was something I wanted to talk about too, Don, because during there was a big divide happening between northern and southern churches on this very issue. They were so divided on whether or not slavery was morally acceptable, like what was going on during the slave trade, and they were like split down the middle at a certain time on this issue. That's how common it was to believe, and this was not that long ago. This is really not that long ago. So, and the Bible was being used as a justification for the people, in the southern churches that were maintaining that this is perfectly hunky-dory in God's eyes.
Perry, did you have something to say a second ago?
I was just going to mention kind of the social aspect that Trav ended up alluding to. It could be explained through some professional understanding of history that it was necessary and that alternatives just were kind of out of the question. Just because this is or was the case doesn't mean it still ought to be, which seems to be at the heart of our conversation tonight. But it could be explained and apologetically argued for that it was a historical circumstance based on the culture and the time period that they were in.
Yeah, I mean, the argument from necessity is going to be a tough one because, like, couldn't you just, instead of enslaving the people, give them jobs?
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't know what verse it is, but at some point, an apologist is going to bring up in the New Testament when Christ says, "I call you my friends," right? And they're going to say, "Look,
God is no longer our master. We do not serve God. He considers us as equals, and I don't think that's ever going to be the case, right? He's not going to, I mean, that's the first thing he did in Genesis was say, like, you're not going to be my equal. You're not going to be like us. You're not going to eat of the tree of life.
Yeah. So
to answer your question about jobs as an alternative, again, unless we could time travel or again have some private understanding, some higher understanding of history, a professional of some sort, it may be hard to argue, just give them jobs. I mean, what was it, like 8 jobs back then?
You paid them for their labor. What's so hard about that?
Yeah.
I mean,
you're making tons of wealth off of their
All I'm saying is that we're living in we're using our modern assumptions and biases about job making and employment, and it may not have been that easy to translate.
Yeah, the person's a greedy fuck is what it is. The person's just greedy, that greedy.
I do want to point out that during the beginning, we're just talking about when the Jews got the Torah and Mount Sinai, there was a lot of laws the Jews were not happy with. To the point they didn't even know how to do them. For example, laws around what food they should and shouldn't eat. This is why till today, during Matan Torah, when we celebrate the giving, we don't eat meat because the Jews didn't know how to butcher their animals. The Jews didn't know how to build their holy temples. There's so many things the Jews didn't know how to do, so many novel new ideas, government positions that they weren't supposed to know how to do, and therefore there was sages and Chazal and all these other. So while we can say, well, maybe it's because it wasn't right for the time, I'm pretty sure God was clever enough to know that and knew how to get the Jews to move from point A to point B, to the point where he made the Jews aimlessly run around in the desert for 40 years. Why? Because he wanted the generation that created the golden calf and came out of Egypt to not have a memory of Egypt to go back to. I think that there were many, that while we don't have that hindsight 2020 that you're talking about, Perry, I think the canon of the Old Testament shows us that there was many novel things that God did that the nation of Israel wasn't sure about how to do, or that even would have been conducive to their society, things that they thought were absurd.
That's a good point.
Which is why there was, what's his name? The guy that the ground opened up and swallowed by that started trying to make a rebellion against Moses.
Korah's rebellion.
I don't remember his name, but that's a whole.
Perhaps I'm just using my. Go ahead, Nivik. You're itching. I can tell. Go for it.
No. Go, Perry. I want to hear you, Nivik. You hold on.
I'll make it brief, Niv. I'll make it real brief. That's a good point, and perhaps I'm just using my bias and preconception of my unconscious atheism and secularism, where I'm trying to now steelman my other position, which I don't agree with, obviously, but I'm trying to give an apologetic, which was what Travis asked us.
Yeah. I thought it was a good apologetic.
No, it is.
It may just be from necessity, and I'm using my secular. I'm not thinking about, oh shit, God did all of this from Sinai, and He told these people. That's a good point that I was unaware of. And so clearly there was that opportunity perhaps of job making, or at least evidence towards it. I'm going to hop back on the PC real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Perry. I want to bring in Niv. You had something to add there, and then I really want to get Zeno, and Zeno has joined us. But go ahead, Niv.
The times, I get where people are coming from. Okay, that's just a times argument, sign of the times argument in what was done. But I mean, why not? Why slavery though? I mean, you could have just went the indentured servitude route. Why not just have them? Because the pattern looked like it serfdom to slavery to indentured servitude. It was because it looked like it was going the route of trying to make it, to get more power, to put more in a state of oppression.
Yeah, you're trying to understand the pathology of it, Niv, and I think like when it comes to God's creations, I think the best general answer I tend to give is that it just seems like if God is the ultimate creator, creates things that they want to see happen, then it's just simply for the pleasure of doing so that God created it in the way that he created it. But I want to get Zeno. The topic today is the claim is the Bible condones slavery. What do you think about that claim? Zeno, are you with us?
Hello?
Zeno.
Hello? Going once.
Maybe not with
Grand
us.
Zeno.
Twice.
Are you here?
Well, I wanted to say something with this whole power thing
let Don go.
to answer Nivik's question. It's important if we look back at like the assembly of the Bible and the Pentateuch, as with the Old Testament, where slavery is very much outlined. We can tell. Our modern day thinkers recognize it to be a political document. It was written as a political document. It has all the hallmarks of a political document, which establishes a people's sovereignty, establishes their history, says why we're here, who we fought for it, and then through these books outlines the laws. When you look throughout history, all political documents kind of look like this. They had a mythos, and the United States are very similar. We, the people of the United States, we have a mythos to us, where we came from, why we are the people. Who did we fight for this? We fought the British. Why were the British bad? Because they did this and they did that and they hurt us. And we have this whole mythos about who we are, and then we have our laws. So this entire collection of books, the Bible, which is named after library, bibliotheca, the same Latin root, is a political document. And at the time, about 2,500 years ago, 500 BC, slavery was an extremely common practice. And all these were simple rules that the Sanhedrin, the laws of the people, the courts used to justify their law cases. It's how you would do it, who you would do it to. At that time in society, there were first-class citizens and second-class citizens. First-class citizens were the Kohanim, the highest of the tribes. Then the Levi, and then the Jews as a whole had a body, and they had different laws to them, different offerings they had to come give at the temple, which is the equivalent of the government. These were simply political documents.
Hey, Don. So can I just ask a clarifying question? And I really do want to put you here on this one.
Yeah.
So let me just ask, it seems like what you're suggesting is that God included some aspects of slavery, even if it wasn't even if it wasn't always or inclusively in legal language, because divine inspiration would require a political reference. Is that as bad as I think it is, or?
I'm not following you. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think he's saying. Sorry to interrupt. I think he's saying that this thing is very clearly human. It's not godly inspired. I mean, we've moved morally from this. This is abhorrent, right? I mean, this is just the best that they could do. Why they did it? Because it worked. Because they could, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and you're saying it's political.
Right?
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
all political documents during this time, even ones during the 1600s, would appeal to a deity. Where did the kings get their sovereignty from? Divine right of kings. Where did the monarchs get their power? This is the same thing. Why does the high church, the high Kohanim, the priests, have this right? Well, they have the right because it was divinely given to them through Moses, through Aaron, and through the sages, and they can track it all the way down. This is why they're the ones who interpret the law, give the law, and maintain the law.
That goes to Perry's first statement of, I bet you the aristocrats, the people who had wealth and power, are the ones that benefited off of the policy of slavery. And where it was used through religion and politics.
Israelite slaves.
A finer point here.
Yeah, but Israelite slaves also benefited from it, right? The nation of Judea and the nation of I think it's Judea and what were the other ones? They weren't called Samaria back then, but the two different groups that together made up the kingdom of Israel, they benefited from having specific laws onto me as an Israelite slave would be way better than a slave from Goshen, than a slave who lived among the Gentiles. So it would be in my benefit as an Israeli slave to have these rules applied to me, as opposed to I would be able to get free every 7 years, right? There'll be different laws to me than to a Gentile slave.
Right or wrong is right.
It was very emancipatory for the people who lived there at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still wrong.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's right.
Well,
I'm
right.
defending
He's just saying from a more secular evolutionary perspective as opposed to a divine mandate perspective.
Yeah.
So we all agree that it's a political document?
No.
I think so.
It's both religious and political.
At the time,
definitely not still. I think it was highly. So I think you can take it two ways. I think you can look at, and again, sorry if this is pseudo academic, but I remember St. Thomas and stuff. I believe it was St. Thomas lived in the area not that long after, and there was always, there's always criticism of, government officials and things like this and persecution. As well as like forms of like wrongdoing in government, I think. I think it was a big issue. And so you can either say, well, God's doing us a blessing by including this, or this is a disservice because this is just not what we're doing. And by the way, guess what? And it's not going to take that long for you guys to figure out there's a better way to do this.
The reason why I have a problem with your benefit narrative is because it's kind of like it's like having an option of one person that beats the shit out of you, another person that will cut off your leg, and another person that will cut off all your limbs. It's kind of like, I go with the guy that will cut off 2 of my legs instead of this other guy that'll cut off all of my limbs.
If you were, so you have to.
So it's in my benefit. So that's in my benefit.
Let him go.
You have to conceptualize how revolutions, how political movements and political regimes change over time. And if you study how that happened in ancient Israel, you quickly understand that there was a reform happening where there was too many idols worshiping, there was too much separation among the tribes. I think it was King Josiah banned the different tribes and collected it all under one manuscript with one God. And within that framework, you lived at a time throughout history where people just said, oh, I'm a slave, this is what I am. But look, this king is making me different than the Gentile slave because I'm an Israelite slave. And it's not like you had a choice to vote for anyone. There was no democracy. But what it did do is pacify your tendency to revolt. Remember, Israel, before the completion of the 5 books of Moses, was a land of different tribes with different deities and different gods. It wasn't until he outlawed that and they unified under one God that things changed. So for them, it was okay for them, right? It was like, if you're homeless and I give you a shitty apartment, you'll take the shitty apartment. But
I understand your argument.
It's not an argument. I'm just retelling you what happened throughout history. This stopped the rebellion. It unified them against the Greeks. It unified them against the Romans. This is what it was. It was a political document. And it's important to remember.
Don, you keep repeating the same. You keep repeating the same thing, that it was a political document, and the fact that people used it for politics doesn't make it a political document. It doesn't mean that people recognized it as legitimate. It doesn't mean it has any of the characteristics of a modern political document. Just saying it over.
It does have characteristics of a modern
political document.
Document.
Doesn't make it more.
It does have characteristics of a modern political document. Absolutely does.
Then did it go as time passed on?
Niv, before you ask your question, there's a back and forth happening on whether or not it has the traits of a modern political document. So
what is the case law, Don? What is the case law for? What is the case law for slavery? Where is it on appellate court?
If you look at case law from the 1830s and 1840s, you'll see it in the United States. If you look at a little bit more modern countries, you can see it in their history. And if you read either the Jerusalem Talmud or the Babylonian Talmud, you will see the ancient judges of Israel talking about slavery cases and adjudicating those common laws and what happened in those cases. You can go look right now. You'll find it.
I don't think that if that never responded to democratic norms as and I don't think that you can not even democratic norms, but just like norms that have any appreciation of like human rights whatsoever, then your entire argument falls apart. I don't even know why, but it does.
I mean, I don't see why it would fall apart.
Yeah.
Political documents don't have to be democratic.
Nate, you have to understand. The ancient world, politics and religion were intertwined.
Real quick. Something has to be. Just writing something on a page does not make it jurisprudence. It doesn't make it law. It means it was written on a page. And
I think Don is saying something different, but let's get you two to come to terms on this. Then let Nivet go, and then let TiVo go, if that's okay. I'm here.
Yeah, I don't think I would imagine we can keep going, but I don't have anything else to truly say about this.
Okay. Don, hang on, Nivet.
I just want to say that obviously, if something is just written down on a piece of paper, it doesn't make it a political document. This is like trivial at best.
Yeah.
It was a political document because it was used by the governing body of the nation of Israel at the time to enforce its laws, codify its laws, and have its judges look back to as their laws, depending on how they would adjudicate.
I think we're always going to see it a little differently, but I don't know if it's a sticking point for me.
Okay. Well, when you figure out what it is that we're seeing differently, just let me know.
Yeah, I'm not really getting the point of bringing up political when we're discussing religion when neither of them are different from one another.
No. I mean, they are slightly different from each other. Obviously, they're intertwined throughout most of history. But what about the separation of church and state? Does that not fall under what you would say?
What's that? That's political. That's all politics. That's telling the church to go fuck itself.
That used to not be different than politics.
Huh? No, I mean it was fleeing from a political religious union. It was weeding. It was separate. It was taking one out because before, the politics of the monarchs and religion, they're both intertwined. You can't argue against the king. You're going against God if you do that because he's anointed. King's anointed by God.
Correct.
Exactly. And there's no. Well, I agree 100%. And just because we, and sorry, I don't mean to I don't see a way that you can ever understand if a law is just or if it's working, if it's pragmatic, if it's procedurally correct, if everything is going to go back to a biblical teaching.
I had that argument with a person the other day. He was saying, "Oh no, they're leaving the government." Yeah, I said, "But they're governing through religion." He's like, "No. It was when they're fleeing from an oppressive government. Yeah, that oppressive government was using religion to oppress. They're fleeing religious persecution from the government. There's no fucking separation between them and the government. What you're not understanding?"
We got you. Let's let TiVo go.
No. I think everybody cleared things up enough.
Okay.
I wanted to add a quick question.
Well covered. Yeah.
Did the harshness of enslavement, was it like a de-escalation over the time is where you're coming from? Was it like
no?
It was harsh at this times, but over time we just modernized.
I'm not defending it. I'm not defending slavery. Don't even attempt to make that into what I'm saying.
I'm just asking you, was slavery less harsh as time moved on? I'm not too good with the history.
Depend on what period of slavery.
Yeah,
slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's true.
I mean, there are arguments that in some respects, classical slavery in the Roman world was actually more humane in certain respects than the slavery inflicted on Black people in America, because under those systems they were at least recognized as people who had some certain rights to treatment, whereas in the United States they were just fully property, and there was little regulation of the treatment of slaves at all. But again,
That's why I bring it up.
Even in the United States, that varied state to state, that varied jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But I do think that we end on this idea that slavery is a very primitive thing, regardless of what you're using to justify it.
Whoa. But real quick, there's also, and to take this gradually, there is context as well in slavery. And so, like, I don't know if you've heard the idiom "back to the salt mines." This is something people used to say because Russia used to send prisoners to go work salt mines in Serbia. So they would say "back to the salt mine," and so like I think just saying that there's historical context or all this other stuff, it's the same thing I'm saying, but that stuff was really meaningful to certain people.
We're discussing context because
I think that when you look throughout history, for example, the Koreans had the longest train of slaves in history. I think it's 1,500 years of like institutionalized slavery. And that itself went through ebbs and flows of more harsher times and less harsher times. So we can't really look at history through a linear perspective. We have to look at history through what it is. There's ups and downs. It might not even be able to be tracked linearly. That might not even be the way to look at it. So no, the answer is slavery did not just get better over time. It got worse at some periods. It got better at some periods, and that really also depends on the amount available. So that's I'm responding to what you were saying. So
I want to discuss why and the factors on why that.
Well, the factors could be availability of food, availability of wealth, availability of animus, availability of slave revolts. Like, for example, let's say you had a slave revolt. Maybe then after that, the generation afterwards is going to be really harsh to slaves. And then after 20, 30 years, it might relax. The laws might change. Then there might be a famine and you can't really afford. So slaves get pushed under the bus. Could be so many things that you just can't afford.
Or the Roman emperor might need more taxes. So he frees all the slaves so he can tax more people.
Pretty much.
You see what they're saying, Nivet?
Yeah, and I think it's important. It's kind of like because people revolted, we're going to make it harsher. We're going to make it harder for you to escape it by putting more policies to make sure what just happened not happen again, or vice versa. Maybe they're saying, you know what, over time we're not going to do this anymore. This barbaric shit, and this. So yeah, I agree. When we talk about it, we should talk about it in acknowledging the content.
Okay. The only thing I want to say is that I still think, and this is just because I do feel really strongly about this. I would just say that you can talk about how it's adapted and changed into context and stuff, and still, if slavery and people are a tool, there's always like a really complex psychology as well as political and social system that is supporting that usage. Like, and so it's not saying that there's a solution, but it's more of a question.
Well, yeah, you have to have a solution to okay it. Like,
when is it good?
These people are inherently bad, and God's punishing them. So it's cool if we just enslave them and do whatever.
Respond to that, Nate, and then I'll let Kahneman go.
No, I didn't. I think it's a good point. I don't have anything else to add right now.
Okay, go ahead, Kahneman.
Well, I had a thought occur to me a few minutes ago, and I just kind of wanted to put it out to the room, see what you guys think about it.
Sure.
The topic today is, does the Bible condone slavery? And I would say, no matter where you land on that idea, that the religious condone slavery using the Bible. What do you guys think of that?
Yes.
Yeah, we were kind of saying that earlier, and where they're not separate from one another. People in power in religion, they were intertwined. And
I would say even today. I mean, if
they're trying to make it happen today.
Our Constitution got rid of slavery with the 14th Amendment, with one caveat that a lot of people don't understand. If you're a convicted felon, incarcerated, then yeah, you are a legal slave as a convicted felon. You can be forced to work without pay in every state in the union.
Really?
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Well, there are some states that have now put it in their state constitution to.
There are some states. You're right. Ohio pays.
But most states, yes, in many states, it's still very much legal to do.
Well, I'm glad to hear there are at least a few that have taken it out. But I imagine if we was to check the Bible Belt, they wouldn't find one there.
Probably not. I'm in the Bible Belt. I don't know about Alabama state prisons. They must be rough. But
so we had a couple people. We have the Day of Wrath, and we also have Neil Spirits, who's deafened right now. I'm not sure if he'll be able to hear. I would love to hear.
Neil, it usually, just FYI, Neil, it usually takes 10 minutes to free the mic up if you're new to the chat.
I'll message him since he's deafened and probably didn't hear you say that.
Sounds like a good idea.
But Day of Wrath, if you'd like to say something, I want to give you the opportunity here personally to say something. Undeafen if you'd like to talk.
They might need to be given a role and disconnect and reconnect.
All right.
That's true. Yeah.
Let me roles. What do I have to give them?
Helpful.
I'm sorry. I was watching myself in YouTube.
No worries. I want to give you the opportunity here to say something if you'd like. Day of Wrath has no mic, no problem. But welcome, Neil.
How long I got so that it's recorded in YouTube.
No worries. Do you have anything to say on biblical slavery and whether you condone or condemn it?
Yeah. So I gotta say something about the Bibles, about the topic. The Bibles condone slavery. So when we talk about Bible, right, we have to understand Bible talks about dualistic concept between a physical realm and a consciousness realm. So when Bible talks about slavery, it's always talk about the physical realm. There's so much happening in the physical realm. So you cannot bring Bibles Bibles actually condone slavery, because Bibles talks about a consciousness realm where you can be free from any type of evil works in the physical realm. So you have to be fair when you are studying Bible. You cannot just look at the perspective of its physical realm, because Bible promoting a process where you gonna be live outside of the energy of a physical realm, which is you gonna be end up in the final realm of a consciousness realm. Consciousness realm, it will be a kind of a so-called better place instead of a physical realm. Thank you.
But Neil, you're making the non-physical affect the physical, what we're in, so we should talk about it in the physical.
We cannot talk about Bible in terms of because Bible brings two concepts, two realms. So if we just talk about physical realm without considering that consciousness realm exists, yes, Bible condones slavery is not okay.
What is the consciousness realm for slavery then?
I don't get
So
it.
there is no such thing as because the concept of a slavery in the physical realm is the concept where you're gonna be tortured, you're gonna be suffer, any kind of a suffering, which is slavery or whatever it is, that will make you later on outside of this realm will be actually having a spiritual rectification in the consciousness realm.
Neil, if you make your argument be the non-physical, only have to do with the non-physical, I wouldn't give a damn. But if you're making something that's in a non-physical realm have to do with the physical realm, which we're in, that's the problem. I'd agree with your argument if you're saying this non-physical realm only had to do with things in a non-physical realm. Go ahead, be in fairyland or whatever that is.
No, we have. My point is that
keep it in a non-physical. You're making something that doesn't exist in reality affect It does exist.
Nivik, I don't think you. I don't think you're directly responding to the claim that he's making right now. I don't know if that's relevant. I don't think it is, but
allow me, please.
Sorry, that's my bad.
No, you're fine. Let me ask you a question that may be beneficial. So, a quick question first, preliminary. What would this consciousness realm, which sounds a lot like heaven, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, but if you are, feel free to affirm that. Do you think that this realm is better and superior to this physical realm, which we may endure slavery and whatnot?
I think Nate is make a good point. You guys not responding to what my point. My point is that if you are trying to talk about Bible condone slavery, this is that title is wrong already, because Bible, there is a two concept that you have to consider. When we talk about the existence of a consciousness realm, that will be a different topic.
Yeah, so Perry actually is directly addressing you. He's asking.
I'll ask it. Yeah, let me ask one more time.
Ask it again.
Yeah, that will be a different topic. We have to change.
No. We're not. Doesn't change the topic. Let Perry actually listen to what Perry's asking.
Well, but I don't know why we can't just extrapolate and say that we need to have at least two conversations going at once.
You should act like
we can have this
I think that's the best way to approach
Nate,
that sort of critique, though.
Nate, you got to let him work it out, man. Just give him a chance to work it out, and if you have a comment, I'll get you in just a second.
Let's go ahead and admit that I am making a non sequitur here by asking this question. Just do me the favor of answering it, if you don't mind. Is this consciousness? It's a duality you mentioned. There's a duality between the physical realm and this consciousness, spiritual realm. Is one better than the other? If so, which one is the superior realm?
Yeah, in the Bible, in their belief of a Christian belief, right? Christian belief that the Bible give a very bold claim that consciousness realm will be a better, superior realm.
Right.
As opposed to the physical realm.
Yeah. So, and the question that I wanted to ask is then, if slavery allows you to be free in this consciousness realm by serving in the physical realm, is what we're calling slavery here, which you think is a misnomer, and you think the title is perhaps wrong in some way, but assuming that we're working under our flawed title of calling it slavery, if it is true that slavery in the physical realm creates this freedom for in the consciousness realm, would it then be immoral to prevent slavery here on the physical realm?
It is moral. So I would, in my opinion, because I want to be recorded into this conversation, that in my opinion we should remove Bible, because Bible is a two different kind of eschatology and theology at the same time. But if we are trying to talk in a physical morality, yes, slavery is not okay in our physical realm. But the reason why they in the Bible somehow is accepting a slavery, because there is a much bigger realm that they're trying to, is kind of like mission that they're trying to achieve. So that process require like a old covenant, new covenant. Even the old covenant itself is even not just slavery, because only one nation is chosen, and a lot of the things that going on in the Bible, right?
So is it possible though is it possible to attain this spiritual realm without all of the slavery nonsense, which may or may not be in the old covenant? We can get to the apologetics in a second, but do you think personally, dependent or independent of the Bible, we can achieve this conscious realm without any of this slavery in the physical realm? Or do you think that's necessary?
We need to work it. We need to working it out without include Bible in the conversation. We can work into the government politics, social politics kind of things, that slavery is not okay. But when you bring Bible, it's a two different kind of a concept. It's totally different.
Fair enough.
There is eschatology that you need to bring. There is a theology that you need to bring. It's totally different concept.
We got you. We got you. I think Don had something to say.
I'm wondering what is so different. Like, let's actually get into it. What is it? What's so different about the Bible when we talk about slavery? As like, why is it so totally different? I don't see the difference here. If most Christians and most believers say that the Bible tells them how they should live their life, and I wonder then which passages are about heaven and which passages about earth, and why do we get to ignore passages about earth and assert passages about heaven?
Well, when you talk about slavery is only quite okay. When I say quite okay, is a process where it is only allowed in the Old Covenant. But what is the difference between Old Covenant and New Covenant, right? This is a theological debate. In the New Covenant, is a little bit talks about slavery, but the slavery over eschatology of a final event. It's like there's no more Jews, there's no more Gentiles, there's no more gender or something like that, and there's no more slavery. That is a New Covenant.
The New Testament does not abolish slavery.
No, New Covenant, not New Testament.
No. What we know what the Old and New Covenant are. I know Don does. There's many times that Paul said that slaves should obey their masters, even the cruel ones. There's other, like in Ephesians and other books, there's similar sayings. Travis read them all off at the first, so it's definitely not abolished in the New Testament.
Yeah. That's why New Covenant is much more a combination between a consciousness realm and it's like, don't be slave to yourself. Don't be slave to evil principalities. Don't be slave to this kind of evil things. Yeah, that kind of a things, right?
I guess I'm just
slavery.
Well, we're talking
you
about.
will be slave. In Romans 7, for example. In Romans 7 talks about slavery against your desire. So when you trying to interpret New Covenant is really complex.
Not
you
really.
You cannot just merely include physical realm, because if you are interpreting in the carnal
1 second,
mind
you're rambling. You're rambling and preaching, Neil. Neil, you're rambling and preaching. So
I know.
So this is why I asked earlier, at what point can you tell when is it talking about the spiritual or when is it talking about the physical, and when do you ignore the physical recommendations in terms of spiritual ones, and when are they just, there's places where it's clear, like you said, don't be a slave to your passions. Sure, we can tell it's a metaphor. It doesn't mean slave literally. And there's other points where it says literally obey your masters, the wicked ones and the cruel ones. It openly says this. It also says when Jesus said, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. There's many of these specific moments where it literally refers to physical laws that need to be followed.
I give you example, Romans 13. Romans 13 giving you instruction that you have to be slave against government. The reason why, because spiritually, government is made up by God, developed by God throughout history.
We're familiar with the verse.
Yeah, but how do we prove that? That's going to be different debate, right?
Maybe you're not understanding my question. Can someone else, Thomas? Can you help me?
I don't know if I'll do a better job than you.
I think we can stop this. I think my
this is good. Well. I don't mind.
We can move to another person.
We're not
it's
trying
good
to.
that I'm already in YouTube.
Hold on now. Hold on. We're moderating here. Hold on. We're not trying to beat you up or anything. That's not the whole point of this. It's just we have these questions, and my main question is similar to Don's, a little bit different, I guess. But how do we know what this consciousness realm is? I'm very confused about what that is, and I'm sure there are probably other people in the chat who are confused about how would I read in the Bible or understand a consciousness realm? Like, what is
exactly? Exactly. No. That will be different type of a conversation.
We're asking you right now. We're asking you right now. We want the answer right now.
I'm answering you right now too.
No, but you're saying it's for a different conversation.
Yeah, I'm answering you. I'm answering you today, but I say it in the next sentence that I will say that. But I can answer you into this conversation but that's going to be taking a long time. But we will try it. Okay. How do we know that consciousness realm exists? That will be the first things that you need to understand. How do we know consciousness is actually mind independent concrete over the energy? That will be the topic that we would like to discuss.
Okay, but Thomas just wants you to tell me what is this realm. Neil, just what is it?
Yeah, once we be able to identify what is it, then we will be able to having a borderline what's between spiritual realm, what is between physical realm in the Bible.
So what is it?
I think it makes sense what he's saying.
Consciousness
I just want
the realm outside of the energy realm. That is it. That is
the realm
That's
outside the energy realm.
Yes.
What is the energy realm?
Energy realm, as we talk right now, we are living in energy realm. The electron is moving right now in your body and my body.
So the physical realm.
So yeah, physical
It's
and
energy realm.
supernatural.
Yeah. And physical realm. When you say energy realm, there's a two condition: visible matter and invisible matter. Visible matter is the stable particle of electron spinning towards proton. Right? So right now, your body and my body is energy in a heat condition. So the thing is that
so we understand what supernatural mean. We understand. So you're saying the consciousness realm is supernatural, is what you're saying?
No. There's no such thing as a supernatural, because naturally we couldn't be able to prove consciousness is in or out, independent or independent of energy. That doesn't mean a supernatural. It's still natural process. It's just that we could not be able to prove it scientifically or naturally. I don't believe in supernatural. Supernatural is an oxymoron.
Okay, so it's a realm that we cannot prove naturally.
Yeah.
The realm that we cannot prove whether it is independent or dependent scientifically.
So it's a realm that supersedes our natural phenomena.
No.
Okay.
Listen to me. When I say that right now as we speak, we are actually living in the energy with heat condition, means electron is spinning towards proton. The concern right now, what about our mind? Is our mind dependent or independent towards that energy? When we say, are we actually living inside of energy, or are we actually part of the energy?
Well, our mind is definitely dependent on that energy.
Can I use a fancy word? Real quick? It might help.
What we are changing right now, is it actually part of the energy that is spinning around? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if I shoot you in the face, you're gonna not have your mind anymore.
God. Well, there's a
we don't go that route.
What's your argument with slavery? What does that have to do with slavery? Can you explain?
Yeah, well,
I think my time is over, guys. We can change to the other person.
Well, okay. Thank you. Do you guys know the word nomological? Because
I know what nomological is.
Yes.
Nomological. You could say that physical slavery is, you can easily find nomological sufficiency for it to at least exist.
Means physical. That's like there's a term called nomological determinism. It just means physical or material determinism. So
what I got from his explanation is that slaves went straight to heaven. Like this was like a process. This is like a entryway in how. So there's a connection with the non-physical world and the physical by slaves doing their duty as slaves, and then they get a ticket into heaven. That's the gist that I was getting. Maybe I'm off.
No, I mean that's all right. We were talking about the slavery part, and we will go back to it. But the previous part was just talking about Neil's duality of the Bible. So
was that it? Was that it though?
I'm sorry.
Was that it? What I just explained? Is it that? Is slavery?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
We're not shutting you up. We don't know. I don't know.
I don't know what to think, man.
Yeah. Well, let's. Does anybody else have a comment on this before we get back to the slavery part? Because we're pretty much on it. We just moved around a little bit.
Yeah, Neil's not here to defend himself. I understand what he's saying, but I think we had too hard of a time to putting it together.
Dumb it down to a 5-year-old
level.
Dumb it down.
I mean, I think I also understood what Neil was saying. I just think that what he was saying was incoherent internally.
If we talk about like a mind independent study of the Bible or something like that, maybe I could understand how consciousness could fit in there. But I mean, nobody knows what consciousness is. If they say they do, then they've hit their head badly.
It's a God.
Neil, were you saying slavery was necessary to get into heaven? Were you saying that?
No.
I was suggesting
he's
that.
right there.
I'm sorry. Let him finish.
I was suggesting that perhaps the consciousness realm that he was talking about, what was heaven. I honestly don't know if he ended up saying that or not. But consciousness is one of those God of the gap words where we don't know much about it, so we plug in a bunch of other unknown stuff with it, and boom, there it is. Attractive. It sells if you put it in a book. You get famous. Right?
Yep.
But yeah, we can.
Sadly, that's where we're at with consciousness. We can show things like awareness, and we can look into the brain and show a lot of different things, but we can't prove consciousness, even for ourselves. So that's always going to be a philosophical problem, I think. Maybe one day we'll have an answer to that philosophical problem.
Maybe once we stop demanding so much evidence for it, even though we have a lot of it in neuroscience and biochemistry, but that's not sufficient.
Well, I mean, maybe it doesn't have to do with those things. I don't know. Maybe consciousness is something that we can't calculate with, maybe it's only calculable by math or something like that. Who knows? I don't know.
Dualism is true. Who knows?
Yeah, Hohenheim's going to say it. Go ahead, Hohenheim.
It doesn't exist. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, consciousness doesn't exist. What's
like free will?
Give us the line on that one.
Well, I think it's just a small circular neurobiological system that we've made to kind of synthesize the world inside our head so we don't make a mistake. So that's our little body inside, or our little brain inside our head, that we use to reference when we've made a past mistake or going to make a future one. So it's like a person simulation.
Well, let's not tangent too hard on consciousness, because I'm sure we could spend a whole
I'll speak on that quickly.
Yeah. If you want to speak on the slavery and stuff.
Yeah. It does.
Please do.
It does. Carry on. It does. Carry on.
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go to the slave. Are you going to talk about slavery, Hohenheim?
Yeah, if you have something to say on slavery.
Yeah,
I did.
Do it.
Yeah, it does. It does. So you can carry on.
Oh, the Bible does condone. I got you now.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
I'd love to question Neil.
If you had, though, Hohenheim, if you had to make an argument of the other side, what would you say? Like, if you were to support slavery, if you could do such
sure, but
hypothetical.
But then it wouldn't be the Bible. If I was to support it, wouldn't be the Bible. It'd be what the kind of Bible was written about and what possibly inspired it. Christ, then I'd say probably the God of the Bible. If the whole story would be true, the God of the Bible would be the Gnostic God that's an arsehole, and Christ came from the original monad to save us from that God, I'd say. But that monad and Christ and that kind of force would not be pro-slavery. So most of the slavery in the Bible is by just arsehole Christians. Well, not Christians, by arsehole religious people.
So it's some political reason independent of any divine.
I reckon they just didn't know that it was. They just didn't know.
No, that it basically would have been made by the evil god, the evil demigod.
I don't know. That would be like assuming all sorts of stuff, and it would be made by the evil. I don't know. But they just didn't know it was wrong. That's why.
In more Gnostic schools of thought in Christianity, the creator god of the Old Testament is the evil god. And
I'm looking for a strong argument.
You're looking for a strong argument, Nev, on what?
For it. It looked like Neil was going the route of giving a strong argument, like, "Hey, this is good because you're gonna get into heaven."
I think
that's not a bad.
He just wants to give Neil the business.
No.
Okay. Were you trying to agree with Neil, Nev?
No, I don't agree with Neil.
He thought he was going somewhere, though.
Did you want to get us back on slavery? Is that what you were trying for here?
But I think that is a good argument. Would you agree?
I don't know what his argument was. Still,
I'm not arguing what his argument was. I'm saying like if that was your ticket into heaven, that's not a bad argument.
I don't know, man. I'm not sure.
Starting to enter the Truman Show vibes here. Let's try and get back on.
Yeah, we can go back. We can go back to that.
My argument there was that blacks weren't allowed into heaven.
The blacks? Is that what you said?
Yeah. They weren't seen as humans, so they didn't get a ticket into heaven.
Are you talking about slavery like a few hundred years ago, or slavery back in like biblical times?
A few hundred years.
Okay, and you're saying probably that they were using biblical scripture to
justify it.
Yeah,
justify it, but to also to prevent them from going to heaven.
We do know that like Jefferson Davis, the head of the southern states in the war. We also know a couple of the top generals said that our institution is that aligned with slavery. Some kind of weird wording that they put it there. Basically, we support slavery, and that is a part of our charter to fight this war. You know.
So usually this verse that will talk about justifying black slavery was regarding Ham, Shem, and Yafet, who particularly the enslavement of black people was rooted in this biblical story. It's from the book of Genesis, the curse of Ham, and the idea was that after the flood, when Noah becomes drunk and the brothers look at him, and Ham looks at him, and he's cursed to be a servant to his brothers. And the idea is that Ham went south, Yafet went north, and Shem went like east to the Middle East, stayed around the Israel area. And the idea that black people are inherently deserved to be slaves to their northern and Semitic brothers due to being the direct descendants of Ham.
Hello.
That was one of the big.
Do you want to go somewhere still?
Biblical brothers would bring up.
That was weird. No, I hear you, Don. I was listening to the whole thing.
I think TiVo was just talking to someone.
By the way, that scripture was, I think, usually misrepresented. It was usually meant to talk about the people of Canaan. So, like, it justified the enslavement of the Canaanites from the Israeli people.
So, did they just equate like black people with Canaanites?
In a sense, yeah. In a sense, I was thinking. I mean,
I guess it wouldn't even.
That's a wonderful thing about the Bible. People just interpret it to whatever they want it to be.
The Bible is big enough and confusing enough where you could do that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even make sense unless they were Israelites, though. If they did equate Canaanites with black people, I mean, wouldn't the slaveholders have to be Israelites then to like even make it?
But also Yafet, which was considered Europeans.
Okay.
By that time, or really would be like Sumerians.
But I got a little bit of Egyptian in me.
Yeah. I like building pyramids. It's in my blood. What was I going to ask? Something about slavery.
Can we think of any other moments in culture and human history where people used biblical or perhaps something similar slavery to justify their slavery?
I would say well, since Christianity is much older than a lot of other religions, I'd say it's probably put more people into slavery than any other religion. That's just a guess of mine. I don't have the statistics on that, but
that is there is so much disinformation flying around from so many people who have no idea what they're talking about.
He just said he doesn't know that that's the case or not, and he didn't say it as he was.
It wasn't directed at any one person, man. I'm just saying I've been sitting here listening to it for I don't know,
you were
10,
wrong.
15 minutes.
But you were wrong saying that he was giving misinformation when he had.
No. So let's tackle what is some of the misinformation you think has been brought forward.
Yeah. What was some of the misinformation we can do?
This alone, that the Bible condones slavery, is just ridiculous. The Bible is the only modern convention, the only modern religious ethical system that instantiates the inherent value of human as an individual in God's eyes. It's the only one. So all of your ideations that are against slavery are rooted in a Judeo-Christian principle. I don't understand what you don't get about this. He's saying it condones slavery. No, it doesn't. In the Old Testament, you're talking about a descriptive secular law, not a prescriptive moral ought. You would know that if you spent even more than a casual amount of time investigating it. I don't know why I have to tell you guys this.
I cannot believe
sending, dude. Why do you got to be like that?
No, but it's okay. Look,
I'm just telling you the truth about the matter. I mean, you can take it as you want, but go take your tone, please.
Yeah, one second, I can ask. 1 second, the people have spent here time quoting specific passages, talking about those passages, showing their context instead of history, looking at specific Talmudic verses that talk about slavery as it was law during that time. So yes, the Bible very much does condone slavery.
No, it does not.
Instead of just saying no, it doesn't. Please provide where the Bible doesn't condone slavery.
Okay, well here's how it doesn't condone slavery. Nowhere in the New Covenant will you find anything that condones anything that's not loving, and I would qualify slavery in that category. I think that slavery, owning somebody else, is pretty not loving, right? And under the New Covenant, that's the second highest of command, is to love your neighbor. Even in the Old Testament, even in the Old Testament, Levitical law, these are descriptive secular laws. There's 3 different kinds of law in the Old Testament. There's the secular, the sacramental, which is the religious, and then there's the moral, right? There's 3 different kinds.
That is a moral
referencing a secular.
That you're doing right there.
You're referencing a secular descriptive law, not a moral
icon.
law.
Don't just gish gallop. Who's saying that you're doing?
I'm directly addressing.
This is
Nate. Anywhere.
Nate wants to say something.
I don't want to be this adversarial, but and not to undermine what you're saying and trying not to overmine this fact myself. I would say if slavery was important, then if it was considered important, then it should have been mentioned way more explicitly in the New Testament, because the New Testament writers knew that they were going to have to write over what was interpreted as Hebrew law. And there's no moral grounds, and therefore I don't, I take issue with the fact that this divinely inspired portion is somehow, just whatever it is. I don't even know if I'm saying this right.
I don't know what you're saying.
Well, I don't know, because I can't believe. Okay,
go ahead.
I can't believe the slide of Okay,
go ahead.
Just real quick. The sleight of hand that this person is doing, right? Because the Bible doesn't anywhere condemns slavery. It's just very clear. He's giving us rules, whatever. But then he says to love your neighbor, to love each other. Okay, fine, but you can love your slave. Like what's you know what I mean? Like there's nothing explicit.
Is it loving? Is it loving to own another? Is it loving to own another?
Sorry. And the last point. Just want to give you the last point about what you just said. And we were left with the heavy lifting of getting rid of slavery. It wasn't the Bible who was helping us. It was people who were interpreting this in a more kind way.
You're gonna have to let people finish speaking.
Well, if he's okay, is he going to monologue?
Sorry,
how many points is he going to be able to make?
He's making 1 point. He's making 1 point.
About to finish. And then you wrap it up by saying that it is actually the Bible that took us away from what is not condemned in the first place. It's just unbelievable how they can bring that around. Like, yes, there's some parts about being loving and all that, but it will have been so much easier if it was just being condoned, right? I wanted to make those points that you're making, but I didn't to sound like I was. Go ahead. I just want to be the devil's advocate, right?
Go ahead and respond, Icon, and then Trev from the Shadows wants me to read some of these verses that perhaps you may have missed. But go ahead and respond to that if you'd like.
To which point he made like several there. So I mean, if I could, that's why I wanted
to since you have nothing,
address these points as they.
I'm going to read.
Not what I said. That's not what I said. I would like the points that he made so I can respond to them. Is that fair?
You want him to repeat? Is that what you're?
So like the bullet points. The bullet points.
Sure. So one of them that he mentioned was you want to love your neighbor, right? And he mentioned that you could love your slave as well. And in fact, in Ephesians 5,
how is it loving to own somebody?
We can read it. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Oh, well, that's for slaves, I suppose, not for the slave masters. I guess I'll just go ahead and read the rest of these. There's two more. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only with when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Again, that's, I guess, love from the slaves. All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Who are under the yoke of slavery. Okay.
That have nothing to do with the owners themselves.
Okay. But that's not the point that I'm making.
That we're going to use that. Well,
go ahead.
Those are the references that we're going to use to point to slavery being condoned. Really? I mean, good job, I guess.
Point.
It's not saying
just one bullet point for you.
I think you think it's saying what it's saying.
Hey guys, I just want to mention that I think Star's here, and she mentioned that she doesn't feel comfortable as a Christian jumping in and into voice, and she's always a really strong contributor to chat. And so I just thought I would make that known to the group. I know some of us enjoy the aggressive argumentation. Yeah, some of us are on our focus, but hey, I'm not done. I'm not done.
It doesn't matter if you're done or not, man. You're sitting there just running on. We know she's more than welcome to come in the anytime she wants to, but if somebody is blaspheming and making her upset, or if there's something going on that is disrespectful to Christianity, that's not against the rules. So we got to remember that free speech here to the maximum, as long as you don't say like too gross of stuff, but pretty much free speech to the maximum. So, did anyone have a retort to Icon, or was there further?
Yeah, I think Longest was going to say something before Nate jumped in about Starfire.
Okay. I got
go ahead, Longest.
Just real quick about the bullet point, right? I mean, I just can't stand when they're using the Bible vagueness, right, to justify something that was clearly okay back then, and for thousands of years it was okay, and then thousands of years of moral heavy lifting on our part, of great thinkers, of maybe we shouldn't own slaves, maybe this is kind of bad, we're all human beings. That idea was not present, I will argue. I will bet money. It wasn't present in the Bible back then. That's what they were.
It's rooted in a principle.
He's stealing credit.
It's rooted in a principle that's instantiated in the Christian ethic. What do you not understand about this?
That ethic predates Christianity.
That ethic that you're mentioning is not given in the Bible. That's something that we humanists, whatever you want to call it, did the heavy lifting and shake that off.
Can I say one thing for a minute?
Coming and claiming it from the Christian point is just insane, and that should be pushed back more. I don't know why.
Can I say one thing for a minute? It's kind of like an abuser beating the crap out of you, and you fight back against that abuser, and the abuser says you have to thank me for the abuse that you're no longer going through because I stopped it. It's
ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. You're saying it's not the pushback. It's the person that was imposing the abuse that is to be thanked for the abuse to no longer be there.
The only way that you could walk away with that impression is if you read it the absolute least charitable way possible, And if you went into it with a preconceived bias that you were looking to affirm, and by taking things out of context and hearkening to a tragic doctrine of sola scriptura, under which you can torture the scriptures to say anything you want to mean. You know, that's that's how you end up with 4,800
that has nothing to do.
Okay, I guess
when you look, when you look at the beginning of
nothing to do with it.
Yes, when you look at Christianity, especially the way it started start zero at the year zero, slavery was not just thriving. It was capitalized upon by the church, and slavery is not thriving the way it did. Cattle slavery, owning people as property by Christian nations, is not a thing that's happening. You're gonna have to let me finish speaking. You're gonna have to let me finish speaking.
Why? No one lets me finish speaking.
When he's done, let him finish.
So, Christianity supported it. The Christian church was good with it. It wasn't something that was passé or wrong or considered immoral. These are secular movements, and even during the abolishment of slavery, Christians were arguing a lot for it. So I think it's very disingenuous to say that, oh, you're only reading it into the Bible if you want to think it's condoning slavery. History is showing us that many Christian thinkers saw it as condoning slavery. This is not something that atheists are reading into it. Rather, we're looking at the history of Christianity, the history of Christian thoughts, and Christian leaders themselves condoning it.
Not true. You're eisegeting the approval of slavery into a portion of Scripture where it categorically does not belong. The Old Testament references that you're pointing to, like I said many times, are descriptive. These are is claims. These are not ought claims. And in the New Testament, you reference somebody, not you, just to be clear, somebody referenced 3 different verses that were all directed to the slave and how they are to conduct themselves as a prescriptive manner. Nowhere in it does say, go own slaves because it's all right. Nowhere.
That is a good point. And I actually agree with you here, Icon. And I do think that oftentimes that atheism, people have these preconceived biases that come into play with uncharitable readings. Let's try and do one about a prescriptive manner of the masters without this bias. Allow me. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism. That's Ephesians 6:9. And one more. Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven. Are these not prescriptive tenets for masters and how to treat their it seems loving to me, first of all. Treat them fair, treat them right, no favoritism. What do you have to say about these two? Do you think that these two also are just merely descriptive and I'm just giving my uncharitable atheism spewing onto it, or what do you think?
Okay, so I'd have to know. You said Ephesians 6 what?
Ephesians 6:9. Yep.
Okay.
And then Colossians 4:1 was the other one.
Colossians. Okay.
Looks like we got a point of traction here, folks. Stand by.
But probably Googling. But I mean, thinking that Christianity back then is the same as now is incredibly naive, right? I mean, we know that's not the case. Like, we were left with this moral homework after the Bible, right? And slavery is okay, centuries, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be owning slaves, right? Like, why then? Why not 50 years after the Bible? Why not? It was because of that moral work that was done, and that idea, had
whether they were descriptive laws or prescriptive laws, couldn't they just put in the 10 Commandments, don't own slaves?
Yeah,
make it easy for everyone.
There you go. That's all you got to do.
Or Jesus could have just said it. I mean, it was just as good as a commandment. People listen to Jesus just as much as a commandment.
People thinking back then, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. And we're like, yeah, whatever, right? I mean, you're crazy, right? I mean, it's just, we're not going to stop doing this. And this is like commanded to us. Like, we have all this land, we have all this stuff. I mean, why not own the slaves? I mean, this is our This is the natural law of things. So that idea, to shake that idea off, right? I mean, it just requires a lot of heavy lifting. It would have been awesome if this book attributed to the creator would have said so. I think it would have made things easier, much easier, and not to come and claim, oh yeah, that slavery thing, oh, it was Christians too. Like, come on.
So his argument is that descriptive slavery is not prescriptive.
Yeah,
that you're to do it.
Which it seems as though he's vigorously.
Can we have an example maybe of like a descriptive law in Exodus 21 that we could sink our teeth into?
Let's see. Did you say Exodus or Leviticus?
Leviticus, I think, is going to be prescriptive, but I don't know about Exodus 21.
Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. Yeah, no, that's prescriptive. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for the next 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free. This seems descriptive. Without paying anything. If he comes alone...
No, but he should. It's not just telling you what it is. It's not just describing the society. If you have a Hebrew slave, then he should...
If you buy a Hebrew slave, he is too. Now, again, I don't want to, is it semantics here? Because it does seem like it could be either descriptive or prescriptive. If you buy... this just seems like an if-then clause. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for the next 6 years. That seems like a command. I don't know if that's prescriptive.
It is a command.
You're referencing secular Levitical law. These are descriptive laws. Everything in the Old Testament outside the Ten Commandments is either going to be sacramental or descriptive.
This one was Exodus.
Even the sacramental is descriptive as well. It's not prescriptive.
I think that's wildly incorrect. Let me look it up. Exactly.
Also, don't get distracted, Icon.
What ecclesiastical authority do you say that? I wonder.
And masters treat your slaves in the same way. Don't forget, we may have found... you defamed us, calling us misinformators, but it seems as though you are the one who is under the misinformation here. Do you have a response to Ephesians 6:9? It seems like you were
as well as Colossians 3 or 4:1 that you mentioned. Yeah,
I'd love to hear.
Sure. Here's what's happening. Paul is describing the master-slave relationship for the contextual era that they're in, the contemporary times. Slaves were a common thing, and it's not giving a moral pass to the slave owner, right? That's the most least charitable reading you could possibly have.
Moral
Yet
pass?
again,
What do you mean?
It's not giving a moral pass to the slave owner. It's obviously saying treat them fairly. Do you think it's fair to own people? No.
You're saying it's a suggestion. It's not a you must do this. You must own slaves. You're saying it's all suggestions, pretty much. Is that what you're saying, right?
Wait, do you think that the phrase treat them fairly means free them?
I would think so.
It clearly doesn't in the text.
Wow. So why does it say slaves then?
How do you treat a slave fairly?
If you thought that it meant free them, then basically every other line after that makes no sense. Because then you've got a collection of lines about what that fair treatment looks like and going free on the 7th year.
Correct.
If you are supposed to free somebody, you're not supposed to be a slave for 7 years.
Okay, I'm looking at where we're talking about in the New Testament in both Ephesians and Colossians.
Look at the whole context of the logic. Like, if that was the case, then afterwards the enslavement shouldn't exist. If that's what it was implying.
I think
nowhere in the following verses are am I seeing what this guy's talking about? Nowhere.
I think he's trying to
references.
Point to how the downstream verses of Ephesians 6:9 or Colossians 4:1 will fall apart or not be able to logically follow absent the slave or even with the setting of the slaves free or the fair treatment being implied as a moral imperative in the verse previous. Hey, explain it. How? Are you talking about the Old Testament portions? Because again, those are descriptive Levitical laws. I don't know how many times I have to say this. If you don't want to
say they're descriptive doesn't make them descriptive.
No, and it doesn't matter if they're descriptive because this is how he's defending this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying the Bible just is not telling you do this. You must do this. He's saying, hey, this is just a suggestion. It's just a description. It's just you can treat them like that, but he's not addressing the point of the slavery thing, which we're discussing.
Yes, I am. In the Old Testament, when I say it's descriptive, okay, what I'm saying is that these are not laws passed down from a moral arbiter, as in these are not moral odds dictated by God. These are
why not say laws. You should or shouldn't follow things?
According to Jews, they are. According to Jews, they are.
This is ducking accountability.
Talking about Christianity, not Judaism.
No, the point is that Jews for thousands of years, along with Christians for thousands of years, have said that these are the ways God says we should live our life. It wasn't some nebulous,
Christians are saying that you have to follow the Old Testament law. What Christians tell you that?
Exodus.
If the Bible is written by man, if we acknowledge that it's written by man, I don't have a problem with what Iconoclast is saying. It's fine. But if this is written by God, then there's a problem. Like, there's no way that this can be defended. That this is in the book. Like, it's just doesn't make If this is written by men, perfect.
That was my question.
Exactly, it's in line with my point actually.
He's evading accountability. It's not saying you should or you shouldn't. It's just saying. That's all. It's just saying.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, Honan.
Thank you. I posted a verse, Philemon 15:16. So this is the verse Jesus writing to Philemon, I think. And it kind of proves that they were aware that it's wrong, but still left it carry on going. So they didn't say anything against it. This is just kind of, please release this person from slavery because he's my brother. I care about him, so... sorry, I'm fighting with a dog. Care about him, so please let him go. So... Jesus was fully aware that slavery was wrong, but they didn't speak against it at all, apart from when it was his buddy. So that kind of a bit of evidence there. Thank you.
That's the point. Like, if you're not speaking against it, that means you're enabling it, so you're for it.
And another thing that he's doing, if you notice, he's saying he's saying this is in the Old Testament when God, he override those ancient. Those are like the new.
Where did he override it?
Well, I don't believe that. It's just something that some believe. I mean, especially when they're saying, "Oh, that's in the Old Testament." Oh no, that's like old news. Like we got this whole new, model with Jesus.
This was just you didn't have to the whole works and faith, grace and shit.
Maybe they were giving out medals for whoever understood that the New Testament wanted to work against slavery. That was just what was going on at that time.
Icon, what is a descriptive law and a prescriptive law to you? Can you define those two things for us?
Sure. Descriptive law would be something along the lines of a secular law followed by ancient Judaic practice and tradition, such as the ones describing what you cannot do, or like the dietary laws, right?
What those you can and cannot do. That sounds
as far as a secular system, right? These are a description of the secular system at the time. These are not moral oughts handed down by divine command.
And then prescriptive
would be the moral oughts handed down by the divine command.
And none of that happened in the Hebrew Bible.
It's not even close to what I said.
Your whole argument is that the Old Testament is descriptive, no?
When it's bad,
there are three types of laws in the Old Testament. There are the secular or the civil laws. There are the sacramental or religious laws, and then there are the divine command laws, like the moral imperatives, the moral oughts. Three different kinds.
Can you give me an example of those moral oughts given down by divine command that are in
the
Old Testament?
The Ten Commandments. Yeah, sure. The easiest example to point to would be the Ten Commandments.
Okay, and so things like dietary laws, then, that's what you're considering to be secular law?
Yeah, descriptive laws. Like, as Christians today, we are not bound by those set of
how do you distinguish
laws.
How do you distinguish between divine command laws and secular law?
By referencing what the new covenant commandments are, which are love thy God with all thy heart and love thy neighbor as yourself. These are the two highest commandments under Christ, under the new covenant instantiated through Christ, right?
How does that?
So under that paradigm, where would you find dietary laws? How is it not loving to your God or your neighbor to eat a strip of bacon? Pray tell.
Look, these scriptive laws are physics.
Okay, so let me just steelman this real quick. Let me just steelman it real quick, Wise, and then I'll let you go. So that passage that came from the New Covenant that you mentioned tells us that anything that doesn't come from the Ten Commandments is therefore secular law. Is that a proper steelman?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I couldn't make that claim authoritatively, I don't think.
So there are then therefore prescriptive laws that don't have to reference the Ten Commandments, correct?
I'm not 100% sure on that specifically. I'd have to do a little bit more research, but I would say that the easiest example of the moral oughts, the moral imperatives in the Old Testament law would be the Ten Commandments, and largely the Levitical law won't include these moral oughts. There will be descriptive secular systems or sacramental systems.
Because of that passage that you gave us from the New Covenant?
No, it was more of a cross-referencing tool to figure out which laws are applicable to Christians today, right? That's why I brought up the verse of, love thy neighbor and love thy God, and how that wouldn't be applicable to eating bacon or the other dietary laws that we're describing as secular systems or descriptive law.
Yeah, and that's fine. That we don't follow them now, that's perfect, no problem. Or maybe that we think it's like secular law, like law by man on those times, perfectly fine. Why is it in the Bible? Why is it there? Where is there no condemnation in the Bible? That's kind of the point that I was trying to make. I understand what you're saying, that this is just, you think this is just secular law. I think the whole thing is secular, by the way. I think it's just made by people, right?
Before we address that, can we clear up how he's bastardizing the definition? Like a prescriptive law would be something like no shirt, no service, right? No shoes, no shirt, no service.
You're prescribing, though.
Yeah, but it ain't. That's not how
I agree.
Yeah.
So
no, we're using the terms radically differently.
Yeah, so that is a prescriptive law, all right? Because when you make a secular law like the speeding limit on a highway, that's prescriptive. A descriptive law is something like gravity or the laws of physics. It's describing the way physics works. Nobody's.
What I'm doing is making the is-ought distinction.
I'm having a hard time seeing how you should not take slaves from you should take slaves from the heathens around you. I have a hard time seeing how that is prescriptive law.
If it says should, it's a prescriptive law.
Yeah, and I also have a hard time
operating under at the time. That's not God saying go take slaves. That's saying in the book, this is how the Israelites did it at this time. It's not saying go do that.
But it's not just describing what the Israelites did. It told the Israelites how to do certain things, like how to wage war, how to take specific people after that war as your slave. It did tell them how to do it, to the point that when you look at ancient Talmudic and legal arguments, the rabbis at the time were in court saying, well, if you have this slave, then how you, and they would go back to the Torah as almost like their constitution of how they should go about these things, how they should go about these things, what is the correct way and the wrong way. It's prescriptive all the way through. You can keep asserting it's prescriptive, but you're describing ancient Judaism, not Christianity, bro. I'm describing to you how these were prescriptive statements, not simply descriptive. If you want to go back through history and say, wow, this is telling us how they did things, that is true. It is telling us how the ancient Israelites did things. But that doesn't mean that us looking at it and realizing it as, oh, this is a record of how they did things for them. And in the context of that book, it was an absolute prescription. You can just keep denying it, but you keep saying that. That's what you're doing. You're just saying
that's what he's doing. You're going to deny it was prescriptive and just say, nah, it's prescriptive.
Yeah, like the way the insulin works in a diabetic, right? The way it works is descriptive, but a doctor administering insulin, saying, hey, you're diabetic, you should take this medicine, you should do something. That's a prescriptive thing.
So
you guys do just a modicum of Bible study and research.
I mean, we have. So
you will understand these things that I'm trying to tell you. You just keep saying the opposite and not validating it with anything. You keep saying
no. That's what you're.
Yeah,
not substantiating it.
So here, I'll do to you what you just did to us.
He's trying to con us.
I'll do to you what you did to us. If you did a modicum of real Bible study and took the time to read Rashi and the Rambam and Chazal, you would understand that what you're doing is just anti-biblical and heresy. Right? I could do that to you as well, but that's unhelpful for a conversation. Do you understand why this is unhelpful?
Okay,
we're also having a disagreement on literally how the words that we're using to argue are used. Like, we can't come to an agreement on what prescriptive and descriptive even means in this conversation. We're stopping at semantics. We can't even get to what it really means.
Stage one enthusiasm is what I like to call it.
Stage one, but I mean, I would imagine most of us in here understand that prescriptions are the ought and descriptions are the is. It's part of the is-ought gap. I would imagine most people understand that who are in here, so it's not
icon.
Yeah, there's nothing to do with God about prescriptive and descriptive. It's the way that something is laid out.
Prescriptive and descriptive is about linguistics. It's not about like something that exists in, exactly.
I've been buzzed in yet again from the shadows. I'm going to read a verse from Exodus 21:20 and 21. If a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished. Sounds prescriptive, anyway. But he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. This verse treats slaves as property and allows physical discipline as long as it doesn't result in death. Now, again...
And let me see if I got this right. And you think that the same God that says to love your neighbor as yourself is saying, go ahead and beat your slaves, just not beat them too badly. I condone.
Hey, listen. I don't think so.
Apparently, I don't think it's so apparent. I don't think it's so apparent.
But there is no hate like Christian love. So some people's idea of love may be a bit different than mine personally. But that's, my own subjective, wretched.
I guess not God. Then would we be saying that the church would then be prescribing this?
Well, no,
we'll get God out of the argument. We're saying that the Bible and the church is prescribing it.
I think yes. Whoever is writing whoever is writing this, and we kind of alluded to this earlier. I think before you hopped in. That there was likely some authority, some aristocrat, some higher echelon political thing that are prescribing this for their own whatever benefit.
Yeah, no, I mean, when it was written, politics and religion were it's so radically different. We kind of need different words to talk about it.
Well, I would just like to make it a little more clear that any divine law or a law that a God gives is prescriptive. Like, divine laws are prescriptive because we're presuming that God isn't bound by the laws of nature, right? He's not under... He can do miracles. So if you grant miracles, he's able to... Like, he prescribes laws. He's not operating... under what already is.
I think Icon thinks that too, that the divine laws are the prescriptive. I mean, that I think it seems to be of little controversy. It is one of the few things that we do agree on in terms of what is prescriptive or not. But anything secular, I'm still, I guess, having trouble steelmanning him, but I think he believes anything secular laws in convention was descriptive in the Hebrew Bible, and a description of a prescription, maybe, if I could be charitable as a heathen. But
I think the split we're working with here is divine versus mundane rather than descriptive versus prescriptive.
That sounds like a more accurate distinction to make. Perhaps maybe we should use those words.
But with a being that is all knowing, can see the future, exists in all moments. Then remove one of your 10 commandments and replace it with "don't have slaves."
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So,
like, all
that's
human.
an infinitely powerful God.
Let's give Icon a chance to respond if you'd like. We're kind of overwhelming him, no doubt.
Sorry.
Not saying you're overwhelmed, just saying we're being overwhelming. But yes, go ahead.
Well, it's just a whole bunch of misapprehended ideas bounced back and forth between the people who don't understand what they're talking about. I mean, I've tried. You keep coming.
I'm gonna have to mute you because there's no reason to say that. You may be smarter than everybody in this room. You might be, okay? I have no idea, but there's no reason. You came in condescendingly. That's okay. We give you a break on that. Please don't tell us that we don't have any clue what we're talking about, because that's just a bit too much. I'm gonna take you out
Christian love.
Why are you whining about this? You asked me a question. I'm trying to respond. And as soon as I
you're being condescending, and it's not helpful.
I server muted you. I'll tell you why. Because one of the rules in this Discord is to be helpful, to be charitable, full of charity, and to be in good faith. And a part of doing that is not assuming that people, not calling people dumb, not telling people they don't know what they're talking about, and trying to be helpful in conversation. You are not doing any of that, which breaks the rules of the server. That's what we're pointing it out.
Oh, so can you rewind the tape and tell me where I called anybody dumb? I don't recall doing that. I just said there's misapprehension being bounced around by people who don't know what they're talking about.
You said
call that condescending if you want, but it's my opinion, and I see this happen very frequently. If you don't like my opinion, don't ask me the fucking question. I don't know what to tell you.
Is that a descriptive claim or a prescriptive claim?
Come on.
No, it's a good question. Is that a descriptive claim or a prescriptive claim?
In my claim, I said that God is all powerful and all knowing. Do you agree on that?
All powerful and all knowing. Yeah, I think that. I think that
so
God
all powerful, So all powerful and all knowing. We hold that to be true. Then God would already know the future and know that we see slavery as wrong. Would know that slavery is wrong and would be able to prescribe slavery as such. Right.
I think God's able to do anything that's logically possible.
Okay, so then I lay my same question at you. Why didn't God put "don't have slaves" as one of the commandments? Seems like an easy solution to this kind of century, millennia long problem of slave ownership.
It also stands to reason that have no other gods before me wouldn't be necessary by that same metric. So why didn't he include it? I don't know.
So then we could say that in not saying that slavery is wrong and then having all of these other things that might be written by people, but then the book gets published, it gets sent out to people, people are able to read it, interpret the way that they will, put it into law, codify it the way that they would, the way that different slave-owning nations had used the Bible to have slavery for so long in argumentation, in law. It could have avoided all of that. But by not doing it, it's condoning it.
Well, no, hold on. The Ten Commandments also doesn't address anything like child sexual crimes or
but we're talking about slavery.
Assault,
yes, we're talking about slavery, though.
So, I get that.
I don't
get that.
I don't think that helps your case, actually.
Go ahead. The one person.
I agree. I think that.
Go ahead.
I do. I agree with you. I think that if the Bible was
you don't know what I'm saying because I haven't got to get more than 4 words out.
No, I'm agreeing with what you just said at the beginning. Is that yes, you're right. There should be pieces in the Bible that are like, don't rape children. Don't do all these like terrible, awful things. Rape bad, sexual abuse bad, battery bad. Don't beat people. This is
why make it vague?
Treat yourself, and this is what love is. That's
he loves us so much that he gave us a bunch of moral homework for millennia to figure it out.
Why make it vague for interpretation? Why not just say, yeah, don't do that? Or just stop it. He's all powerful.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that we say, hey, that's what they didn't know better. I mean, this is the best that they could do back then. Right? I mean, I don't think, right? And then coming back and saying, yeah, we ended up figuring it out 2,000 years later, so that means that the Bible is good. It's like, come on. Right?
Yeah, it could say, don't sit on the furniture your menstruating wife sits on, because it's unclean. Did that.
It's vague. You don't know if it's describing or implying you shouldn't sit on the furniture.
Let's see here. I see Upset Cucumber has been in here along with Spiderface, along with Loose Anus. Actually, I think Lou said something earlier. But if Upset or Spida, if you guys want to say something, or yep.
I mean, so anywhere in the Bible, does it ever contradict the idea that slavery would be okay? Like, wouldn't you say that there's plenty of areas where it would be like, yeah, this doesn't really line up with slavery being okay?
The entire thing promotes slavery for mankind, right? We are to be a slave to Christ. Like, I don't know what the problem is. The theist is like, oh no, it doesn't promote slavery. No, it's trying to warm you up to the idea. And if you won't be a slave of a man, then you sure as hell better be a slave of a god.
I don't think it has. I don't know much about it. And Icon will be the first one to tell you that. But I don't know if there's any contradictions in it. I think it's easy to make contradictions out of such loose literature from ancient peasants who used to shit in the ground. I don't know if there's contradictions, though, to directly answer your question. I'm sure that's a question for God, or I mean ChatGPT.
And what it promotes is that God sets governments, right? So if a government has enslaved you, you just go along with it, right?
Well, I mean, it also says that, God's infinitely powerful, but it took him 7 days to make the universe. That's a contradiction.
His argument is the Bible's not saying you should. It's just that people misinterpreted it that way.
That isn't necessarily.
Then it's an imperfect document.
Or fucking actual human.
Yeah, it's conceding that it's not perfect. That part is actually that's by humans. Actually, not that, but the loving thing, the Jesus thing, all that is that's cherry picking, and it's cherry picking on their own terms because they think God is all loving, all powerful. I don't know why it has these qualities because if God exists, it must be all perfect, and I don't know where they're getting this from. Right, but this is the kind of problems that we have to deal with. That we have to do some heavy lifting on this stuff, right? And it takes time to. It's not easy to shake off. Today we have things the Bible is not addressing. There are problems. Right? Someone was saying something about killing people, death penalties, and the way that we treat a bunch of stuff. Right? I don't want to get into it, but. That's something that Christians in 100 years from now, when we figure it out, they're going to also claim it's in the Bible, right? I mean, it's just like a prophecy,
fulfilling.
Well, yeah, no, it's like, hey, if you kill your slave, then you're going to be killed, but also do not kill. So
it's very brilliant. There's no stance. It's just so you can say at one moment, oh, it's describing, and at the next minute you say, no, it's prescribing.
Well, it's prescribing to not kill, but it's describing to kill when certain things happen.
you get your cake and to have your cake and eat it too.
We got.
So I mean,
yeah. No, keep going.
no. I'm just gonna say that thing that I never actually thought about that, like the child stuff on the Bible is nowhere to be found, right? That's insane. So there's no rules about that. Like there's no consent age. There's nothing. Actual human.
Well,
I know that there's an argument that a man shouldn't lay with a man is a man shouldn't lay with a boy, depending on translations. But that's all that I know for that.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So it could be a statement against pedophilia, but
well, a lot of Christians think that Jesus cares for children, right? Because he says, well, or they interpret it to mean if you lay a hand on a child, it's better for you to have a millstone tied around.
Oh my God!
Right? But what if you read it? What he's really saying is, if you inhibit children from coming to Jesus Christ, right? Then that's the real crime, right? So the Bible perverts what's actually bad, like maybe killing your offspring for not being a virgin on their wedding night, or for being a drunkard, right? You can stone them to death. That's what it promotes. But
not a Christian ethicism.
The real crime is not encouraging your kids to be subscribers to this cult.
I saw King Frustrated, not to elongate this pause that we already have. I saw King Frustrated hop on video. If you want to say something, go ahead. We also have Itchy Meshy, Spida, Dale Sue, of course, who I don't need to invite, as he is one of the more long-standing members here. Looks like he's just chilling hard in bed right now.
Yeah, chilling hard.
But hold on, guys. I want to give Itchy or Frustrated or Spida an opportunity to talk, and then we can get right back to you, I promise.
Sure,
What's
I'll
up,
say
Itchy?
something real quick. I just want to say real quick, for one, I do think the Bible does say that it doesn't give like an exact number for the age of consent, but it does say that it is past the age of maturity. So, like, for example, I believe it's in Corinthians. It's prescribed that it says something along the lines of like, if a young man like isn't sure about whether or not he should like sleep with someone he's engaged to, or whether or not he should marry someone he's engaged to, it says once she's past the flower of her like it uses like
or whatever.
Yeah. And then it's also in the Old Testament, there's like a story which describes like a young woman growing up, and it says that once she had grown hair and her breast had grown, then she was ready for love. So, and it also says that I was just hearing some things earlier. It also says like you can't rape women, like raping women is punishable by death. So I just want to say that real quick.
Yeah, they use like these metaphors for puberty to whatever the metaphor was.
It doesn't give like. I think it's fine that it doesn't give a number, because like
everyone's different.
Yeah. People like mature differently, and like also not all maturity is like we know today that like most people are done maturing by like 18, but some of that maturity is like mental maturity. So I mean, like it's the best way that they can like measure it themselves. Like,
let's try to get back on track with slavery though here. Because that is the topic today. One thing I wanted to add, sorry, I've been on my dinner break. Thanks to Thomas and Perry for covering. That was great. I listened to everything that was going on.
I'm gonna get a bite to eat real quick too.
Yeah. Thanks, Perry.
Yep,
I'm here with you.
And Don, thank you. So I wanted to read just a little bit of some historical positions by prominent Baptist ministers and Presbyterian theologians, and what their positions were on slavery in the Bible. And because I think it was Iconoclast has been representing his position on what he thinks is correct, that is counter to what these professional theologians and other people who have read and studied the Bible think. And I'm interested to know if Iconoclasts like how do you know you're right and they're wrong? Couldn't it be the case that you're wrong and they're right? So Richard Furman lived in 1755, was born, died 1825. He was a prominent Baptist minister in South Carolina and an influential figure in Southern Baptist history. Furman wrote extensively to defend slavery as consistent with biblical teachings. In his letter, Exposition of the Views of the Baptists relative to the colored population of the United States, he argued that both the Old and New Testaments sanctioned slavery. Key argument, Furman claimed that slavery was divinely ordained, citing passages from the Bible that regulated slavery, like we've been talking about today, Leviticus 25:44-46, and instructions for slaves to obey their masters, Ephesians 6:5. So this is one example. I have a lot of different examples here. But this is a prominent Baptist minister in South Carolina, believing that slavery was ordained by God. Now, if Iconoclast is still here, why are you right and why is he wrong?
Why would I be right and why would he be wrong? Because anybody using scripture to justify chattel slavery, which is what we're talking about, I think you said that he was, mid-1800s when he was writing this?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I would say that he's heretical in his teachings and is not in line with anything found within the Christian ethic from a church perspective. So,
okay. Now, how do you know?
That would be.
How do you know?
How would I know? Because there's a unified church doctrine on this.
Why
down
does that?
On the Orthodoxy,
why
why
does that matter? Why does that? How is that more correct than what this Baptist was teaching? You haven't pointed to anything. You just cited some authority.
Back to the argument of sola scriptura. It's the same thing I said last night when we were having the homosexual versus heterosexual conversation. Sola scriptura. You can torture scripture to mean anything that you want it to mean.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have an ecclesiastical authority to which you can cite as an authoritative figure as to what this is actually saying.
So how are you not doing that?
Yeah, you're doing the same thing. You don't see that?
No, the authoritative source to which I'm citing is the authoritative source to which this Protestant guy, this Baptist guy who's using scripture to justify slavery, is not citing. He is outside of the doctrines and using scripture to justify something that's categorically evil is heretical. I mean, I don't know how else how more plain I could be about this.
But he has come by this through a natural reading of scripture, right?
Right, sola scriptura. That's why I discount and I reject anything downstream of the Protestant Reformation. If it's not in line with church teaching, I'm not to say that all Protestant doctrine is wrong, because I'm sure that there are things in Protestant teachings and doctrines that are going to be in line with how the church teaches and prescribes things. Sure. But anywhere that there's variance, anywhere that these things diverge, one is right and one is wrong.
Where in the Bible does it say that you should be relying on this authority that you've cited?
Is Pope?
No, I don't have a pope. I'm not a papist.
So Icon, you realize that you are citing an authority that God and the teachings in the Bible did not ask you to cite. You are meant to do a natural reading of the Bible and come to this by
Where
your
do you see
own
that?
individual interpretation. That is the natural
Says
reading
who?
of the Bible.
That's your claim.
You don't think that's the case? I mean,
What?
I've yet
No.
to meet a Christian that doesn't believe this in my entire life.
Everyone
Then
of
you're not
us.
familiar with Orthodoxy or Catholicism.
What?
Then you're not familiar with Orthodox or Catholic teaching and tradition.
You don't think in Catholicism you are called to do a natural reading of Scripture?
No, what I'm saying is that when there is a verse in question as to the interpretation of it, there is an authority to which you can appeal in Catholicism and in Orthodoxy. It's the ecclesiastical authority of the church.
Are you Mormon? He's Mormon.
Oh my God, no, no. Where do you get Mormon out of it?
Hold on, wait. Who is your higher authority beyond God and the Bible? I'm confused.
His name is Iconoclast. Most likely, he is a Catholic, isn't it?
But actually, Star, I think you're asking a fantastic question. This is exactly what I'm getting at. Iconoclast wants to call out others for citing different authorities and how certain people aren't citing themselves as the authority. Are not citing. Man, like. I don't know.
I'm confused too, and I'm Christian iconoclast. Can you please describe to me where, if you're not getting your authority from the Bible and from the Holy Spirit itself, exactly who you're referring to, like which human being you are going to and expecting them to tell you the answers?
It's not a human being. It is a system. It is an institution known as the church, which has a
Which church?
Oh, there's only one.
Really?
Oh, come on, isn't it?
I think,
and it's everyone's personal
as far
church.
as I know, the church is whenever two or more come together, Christ is in the midst. And church is inside of me, you, and whoever else is trying to share Jesus's word right now. This is church.
But which Christ is speaking out of everybody's mouth?
Holy Spirit.
No, I don't think so. I think it's everybody's own personal interpretation, and I think that's been demonstrated here.
So I was right when I asked if you were Catholic and obeyed the Pope.
Oh, that's not Iconoclast speaking. That's somebody else.
Yeah, you're not correct. I am not Catholic. In fact, I don't have a denomination.
Let me see if I can still man Iconoclast's position here.
Okay, thank you.
What I think what he's trying to say is, like, you have your two individual members of a church, of the church or whatever. You have both of them believe that they have the correct interpretation of this one particular scripture. How do you reconcile this? That's what he's saying, is like whenever two believers are having a disagreement about what a particular scripture is saying, that's when the church intervenes and says this is the correct interpretation due to the fact that they study it, and all that other good stuff. Is that about correct, Iconoclast?
That's the closest I've heard it represented so far.
Well, if that's correct, then
my argument
might as well be written in gibberish, right? Because if we all agree we can do a natural reading, right, and we read that slavery of children is permissible, and we say, what the heck, it's permissible, natural reading, this is crazy. But then there's like this authority now we appeal to that tells us, oh no, you can't use your natural reading, trust us, bro, it's not permissible.
So, and then I also have here, I mean, we can look at Pope Nicholas V as well, who was, saw slavery as a divine tool for expanding Christianity, seeing it as a way to subjugate and convert non-Christians.
Can I just say something before I bow out? I gotta go, but I wanted to say this, and I've been waiting all day. I'm sorry for talking all over you.
That's all right.
I just wanted to say that American slavery was never justified in the Bible, and any church, any person who thinks that our Bible ever okayed that isn't reading it.
Well, it's easy
because
to see.
What was done was people being bought and sold as if they were cattle, having their wives and their children ripped away from them, and all kinds of stuff that the Bible actually said never to fucking do.
that was actually done in the biblical text as well.
One more thing, and then I got to pop out, and you guys can argue it. But I want to say one more thing: slavery still exists. It's going on to this day. It has not ended. And half the stuff that any materialistic person has may have been literally made by them, and so it is still a pertinent issue. This is not a relic of the past. It still exists. It just doesn't happen as much in America. We just buy their shit.
Yeah, but it's easy.
I'm sorry, I gotta go.
It's easy to see how honest Christians in the United States during the slave trade could easily justify their slavery by looking at the prescriptions, because I know there's been confusion about what a prescription and a description is tonight. It would be easy for an honest Christian to read, oh, okay, so I'm allowed to do this. Very straightforward, and that's what in fact happened, and it's so fine for Christians nowadays to be so self-righteous and be like, oh, that wouldn't have been me, that was not right. Well, it probably would have been you if you were in the United States, and you would have thought that these justifications were just as valid as they did, probably.
And I just have to say she was completely incorrect there. Like the type of slavery that went on in the antebellum is very much described in the Bible as well. I think it's pretty horrendous to drop that kind of thing and then just dip out. It's kind of like, someone coming in saying, it was actually George Clooney, he did 9/11, then just leaves without being able to defend that.
Well, you could give her the benefit of the doubt and say, like she did say she had to leave. Also, can I just say, Travis said that it was dishonest, but that these were honest people, but is it not dishonest to use different copies of the Bible to justify your slavery? They use copies that did not contain every Bible. Is that not? So they're not honest?
Did they believe
Christians?
Well, they're honest.
They're dishonest because they're manipulating the Bible.
Were they handed scripture, told that it was divinely inspired scripture from God? And if they weren't, and they're just making their own shit up, then I would hold them accountable. But if you read the historical context, we can see that they were using the same verses in scripture that we have been talking about here today to justify slavery in the US of A, baby. That's what was going on.
Did they? Okay. Did they not? Did they or did they not use altered versions of the Bible? You can say.
So,
I'm fine with you saying that they use verses that are in the Bible today. I'm fine with you saying that.
They were using.
I get what you're. I get what you're kind of saying.
They were using Exodus 20, Exodus 21, 20 through 21. They were using Leviticus 25, 44 through 46. They were, they were even using Genesis 9, 20 through 27. They were using Ephesians 6:5. They were using Peter 2:18. And we've been.
I'm not saying they weren't. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm not saying they weren't.
What are you saying?
That's all I'm saying.
I'm saying you called them honest, and I'm calling them dishonest because they altered the versions of the Bible.
I see what you're trying to get at. You're talking about the slave
I'm not saying
Bibles,
they didn't use
correct?
those.
You're talking about the slave Bibles. So you see, the slave Bibles weren't exactly to get them on their side or to get, slave Bibles were given to slaves. And so they were given this. It wasn't that they were, this is what they were using to just solely justify it.
Yeah,
they themselves read the whole Bible. They just gave their slaves a different Bible. And so it's not to sit there and say that it's dishonest of them. It's not. They're using the same Bible that everybody else uses. They just gave their slaves different Bibles.
I think it's fair to say that it's dishonest because they're not presenting the whole truth in the context of Christian. If you were an honest Christian, you would try your best to present as much of the truth as you can, but they were in fact altering and manipulating the truth. Even if it was to the slaves, that means that they're not honest.
This whole religion is a manipulation of the truth. I'm not going to split hairs on whether this one was worse than those who lied about being divinely inspired and wrote this stuff down. All I'm trying to point to is that there's a multiplicity of interpretations of slavery. There are many people and people alive today that will justify slavery in the Bible as divine command. They just will.
And
divine.
And there are people there are people that will argue against it.
Yes. Correct.
Using divine command. But that doesn't mean.
And I'm just pointing that out there because there's people coming into this room very self-righteously thinking that they have the golden calf, right? They have the right answer and they're gonna preach it. When I don't think that that's consistent in how Jesus has challenged them to bring people.
I agree. Like I don't think anyone has the 100% full truth, especially when it comes to the Bible, because there's too much for any one person to understand it all in its entirety.
So why not a narrative?
I'm wrong.
Hang on.
Why not a narrative of getting rid of it?
But I do think that can be the same can be said for anyone. And any belief system, like there are probably many people here who don't agree with the Bible who think, I know how I'm going to crush Christianity today.
Although there is a next level arrogance to thinking that you know what God meant. That's a next level arrance that I think it can be. I think it can be. I would never dream of doing as a stupid ape like I am.
No, here's the thing. I think it can be if you try and say, I understand everything God meant to 100% of how God meant it. But if it's true that God gave us the Bible, then one can say that we can understand it to some extent.
Yeah, I think you're speaking
in as much
wisely.
As it's real.
I think God gave us atheists to update all this stuff.
Well, we help, but
I
think
that's probably true.
The Bible.
I think
why we don't update the Bible.
Well, I think what Itchy is saying is it actually reminds me that there's a chapter in my new book that I'm writing where I talk about how all Christians should be fallibilistic right off the bat of how they approach their faith and how they preach it to others, because Jesus asked them to do it. You should all be fallible. This should not be something where you feel like you're going to go into the room and deliver the 100% gospel. That is not biblical. I'm an atheist and I know that. And I'm dedicating a chapter to it in my book because it really pisses me off when people go around arrogantly thinking that they have the perfect version at any level of God's word. You should be fallible if you're a Christian. And
I know what you're talking about. God hates all the same people I hate.
Well, I do agree with you, especially because the Bible preaches so much humility. It's like that's one of the most important parts of humility is, knowing that you can be wrong, especially when it comes to God.
Yes,
I am the humblest of the humble.
Why give a step-by-step description of a process that can be interpreted as how to do? Why not just do the opposite? Give the opposite of that.
How does it promote humility? What it promotes is you better be humble before God, right? The God isn't humble.
Well,
no. I mean, I do obviously the God is humble. He humbled himself to be a human. But I do agree with saying God doesn't necessarily need to be humble. We need to be humble because we should know that we don't know everything and that we're not all powerful and we're not all capable and we fall short. That's why we should stay humble, because we need to remember that we fall short in all these capacities. But if God doesn't fall short, he doesn't need to be humble, but he still is.
The Christian isn't about being humble, right? They're about standing on a firm foundation, right? They have the God. They humble themselves before the God, but then they're claiming that they know what the God wants them to do, and they're standing up for that, right? But I think
they're claiming for it because
foundation because I've hardened my heart against this God, right?
Well, the thing I argue, Wise. I just wanted to say the thing I argue, because you just said they act as though they know what God wants. Yes, they know it, but I would say there's good biblical reasons, and again, I'm an atheist, but there's good biblical reasons to justify not putting any kind of absolute certainty into your epistemological framework as a Christian. It calls for you to be fallible with regards to your own knowledge. So I hope that my chapter on this will convince at least some Christians out there to just be more fallibilistic in what they believe.
Humility? Sorry, humility?
Yeah.
Humility is to say, yeah, we don't know. It's not saying, yeah, oh yeah, God exists and he is humble. It's like,
no. But look, you guys, I'm talking about like little teaches in Proverbs about like we got to get it right. Like I just posted a long list. Remember, the Bible is many different books, a huge collection. It's a vast document. You are all, whatever virtues you uphold, like I post sometimes for fun. I use ChatGPT to do this, but I say, ChatGPT, please show how the Bible is consistent with the 6 Pangburn virtues and maxims. And it will give me this beautiful printout showing where all of my stuff can be found in the Bible as well. So, you know, don't be convinced that there's only evil in the Bible or only bullshit. You can find some stuff, but I think it's a mistake to, of course, believe that it is anything divinely inspired outside of, you know, humans trying to create laws and give moral teachings. That's what I think is going on.
Yeah, that's right. But what do you think about the statement, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? Is that humble?
Well, I mean, if someone's saying that, I would point them to to this.
That I would say that is humble, because you're not saying I can do all things, period.
Yeah,
you're saying I can do all things. I can do all things by the power of God. So that's literally saying, that's humility. It's putting someone above you and saying by his strength you're doing everything, not by your own strength.
Oh, he's not talking about himself.
So in the literal, in reading it, it literally is humble.
See the switch there?
Hmm.
It's not himself he's talking about, it's God.
What are you on to?
What?
Dave? What are you sniffing?
No, he's saying that he's not really himself he's talking about, it's really God, right? Like, but what he's doing is not really coming from him and his arrogance. It's really coming from the power of God.
I think there's an honest humility thing in the Bible, but it's not teach. Okay, that is not. It is not teach, because I think Nietzsche has an argument like that about if it was really, if they were actually teaching what Jesus, this hippie was doing, you know, we will better off. But that is not what they're teaching us, basically.
Oh, so you're saying it's like it's not commonly taught in the churches, is what you're saying, but it's in the Bible. Is that what you're trying to say?
You could find it. You know, you have to like dig and.
I don't think you have to dig that. Yeah. I don't think you have to dig that hard. I think it's pretty clear. It's all throughout the entire thing, that humility. Like even in the Old Testament, a lot of the times it'll say something like you must fear the Lord, but the actual word for fear there, like in Hebrew, like pertains to more of like a humility and like a reverence and like. You get what I'm saying?
It's a bait and switch, man. The person's really arrogant, and he's saying, and he can't come out and say like you to do this or you to do that. He's like, no, God wants that, but it's really coming from him.
Well, I think you're like psychoanalyzing something that like you cannot know for sure. You're trying to. It seems to me that you're trying to say that if someone uses that phrase, they're actually being arrogant, but then they put on a face and say, "Oh, but it's really God." But they really think it's themselves. You can't know that for a fact.
If it's coming from themselves, let's say hypothetically, you can look at the pipsqueak and say, "Come on, man! Like, look at you! Like, you're dumb, you're small, you're weak." But I'm just saying, like he couldn't go that route because a person couldn't go the route of being cocky and saying that they could do something that they obviously can't, because nobody would believe them. So you just hide behind God.
Well, I think we're a little in the weeds here, but I wanted to say something for the record. There was a caller. He was bringing up something a little bit esoteric before about, well, he's really representing the like spiritual freedom over physical freedom. Do you guys remember? It was an Asian fellow. I forget his name, but he was talking about it earlier. But this is a common argument regarding slavery. It's just, one of many common arguments from apologists, right? This idea that Christianity prioritizes spiritual liberation over physical circumstances. He was talking in the spiritual realm as like a consciousness realm or something. So I think that was his own thing. But yeah, the Christianity prioritizes spiritual liberation over physical circumstances. Slavery in this view is a temporary condition that does not impact one's ultimate standing before God. And then obviously the common rebuttal to that is that this perspective downplays the real suffering and injustice of slavery. Then it's going to get back to the problem of evil and the problem of God's morality and whether that's problematic to you or not. But I just want
Thanks a lot, Plato.
I think his argument was that people wouldn't mind because that's their ticket to heaven.
Well, I mean, immediately that does sound like somewhat reasonable, considering that like when Jesus came, he was preaching that his fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy was not like a deliverance from the oppression of like the Romans or like whoever was holding the Jewish people captive, but it was a release from a greater condition of bondage, the bondage to sin, right? So immediately that does make sense to me.
It makes sense to you, but how do you know this stuff?
Seems.
Thomas.
What I'm saying is that's what Jesus said.
Yeah. Because the Bible said that's what Jesus said.
Well, I mean, if you want to go into like whether or not the Bible is a reliable depiction of what Jesus said, we can. But
yeah, I mean, I'm just.
Obviously you don't. But
I mean, we can.
Yeah,
it's up to the host.
Well, I mean, we can go there. We'll go more to. We just did a Bible reliability episode, so I think we should kind of stay on slavery.
Yeah, I'll stay on topic. The only reason I mentioned it is because I didn't know where the information was gathered from. Then I was like, okay, let's get the Bible. And I was just going down the standard road of how do we know the Bible is true, that kind of thing. So whenever I hear people talking about Jesus in the chat, I'm like, do we even know that Jesus existed? Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
That's a thing. That's a thing that always frustrates me about Christian apologetics and some of the ones that rely on like, another outside authority. You really need to go back and read your Bible, because sometimes I feel like a lot of Christians have never read a shred of their Bible when they say stuff like this. Like you're meant to be able to know God through your own natural reading of Scripture.
I think it's fair. I think you're partly right and also partly like misconstruing it. Okay. It's like obviously. Like most people mean by that is that like if you read the Bible, you will kind of like you'll naturally kind of get a feel that it's divinely inspired. But that doesn't mean that every single time you read something, you should immediately know exactly what it's saying.
Oh, and I'm not saying
that. I mean, but like through the natural reading of the text, what it's trying to say for sure. But I think with translations and such, often there's passages where like much of the truth of the passage is missed out on if you don't dig deeper in, and can be lost in the context of a just natural reading over it.
I've got a question.
Sure.
How does you sit there and said that like when you read it you can get the sense that's divinely inspired. Where do you get that sense at? Like which
you mean me personally? Because that's sure, more of like okay. Well, from my personal point of view, it seems for one, the morality of like Jesus seems far too great, and it seems. Like here's the thing. A lot of people come saying they're like a prophet or something, but then in their life or in the things they say, it's like it's very clear that a lot of the things that they're talking about are for their own like good or for their own benefit. But like for one, in Jesus, not one word have I ever like heard him say ever where it was like, you can tell when he says these things, it's for the good of the people he's talking to, not for like his own self gain. Like there's no motive that I can see in the actions of Jesus, like for his own good in this world. So, and then just real quick, and then also the other thing that I find very interesting is like the consistency thematically throughout the whole Bible, and things like prophecy and stuff. So
what do you mean by consistency?
What I mean by
I'm going to get back to the Jesus thing.
Yeah, okay.
I need to know this. What do you mean by consistency?
By consistency, I mean like thematically throughout the entire Bible, there's themes of sacrifice and of redemption and of humility.
So
these themes are present from the beginning to the end, and there are also themes that seem very prophetic of like Jesus coming, like much of the sacrifice and the yeah.
So you realize you just vaguely described the hero's journey, right?
Yep. Sure.
You just
I'm completely fine with that. I'm completely
okay.
Fine
So
with that.
you're completely fine with the fact that you're describing the hero's journey, which is a normal storytelling device. This is something that everybody does.
The problem with that is that this hero's journey that's being displayed throughout the thing was displayed between 66 books by 40 different authors. It's pretty hard to maintain these kinds of themes.
The thing is that
in the way it does.
No. Hold on. I've got to stop you there because that's not true. The thing is, it's true in the sense that they are thematic throughout the entire 66 books, but that's because, as I said, it is a common theme. Like, as a matter of fact, I have a really good friend who is an Assyriologist. He's on YouTube by the name of Dr. Josh. Dr. Josh, actually, he went to church. And he was a very, very big churchgoer, and he sat there and he went and did this whole entire Bible quote thing to the people. He put up a verse on the screen, and the people would read, "Oh yeah, that's from this book, this verse." He's like, "Give us a hard one," and they send up another one. It's like, "Oh yeah, this is a great one. Yeah, it's from this verse." So he sends up another one, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's in Genesis. It's the story of Noah's flood," and it wasn't. It was a verse that, word for word, almost kind of close similarities between that and the epics of Gilgamesh. These are themes that are coincide throughout all different cultures. You'll see these types of themes all throughout different religions, different. Hell, you see that going up into even you're talking about Shakespeare, like the hero's journey and all these different themes. These are common themes throughout all of cultures, throughout all of them. And so either you are saying that. Yes.
Sorry. They're gonna tell you Shakespeare is not still. It hasn't lasted for 2,000 years. That's what they're gonna tell you.
That's not what I'm gonna say about.
Yeah, but if we want to go that route, we can talk about the epics of Gilgamesh, which are even older than most of the books of the Bible.
Can I say, from what I've heard about Gilgamesh, it doesn't seem to be like an actual one-to-one.
It's not a one-to-one.
No, I know, but there's some big differences. Like, for one, I think Gilgamesh has a completely different timeline for how long the thing lasted, and I think all that really says is that maybe there was some big flood, which they also experienced, and there's some tradition which will do.
According to
can I talk about
King? Let him finish.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I just want to talk about the thing with the themes, and I'm reading in the chat, people are saying those themes are present in Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and stuff, right? I think that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that because those themes are present, the Bible is true. What I'm saying is these themes. I mean, for one, it is interesting that most of these themes that are present in the stories that are written were partially inspired by the Bible, because the Bible came beforehand. What I'm saying.
Wait, no, hold on. What?
Can I finish?
The Bible came before what hand?
before like things like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings and.
But it didn't come before like Gilgamesh.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying about the Epic of Gilgamesh, from what I've like read, it's been a while, but it is remarkably different. It's not like it might contain some of the same themes, but it's not the same thing. But what I'm trying to say is that it's not the themes that are like proving that it's divinely inspired. What I'm saying is like maybe like these themes are present in all of these stories because they have truth to them, and they're present in like the stories. I mean, they're present in like reality, like they pertain to reality in some like profound way, which is why we choose to use them in all the stories that we do.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you there because the thing is like the hero's journey can be seen through everything, even throughout.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Okay, so I've seen a lot of people. I'm seeing a lot of people get stuck in this point, in this part. Okay, I think maybe something useful will be not to think in our current times, but maybe think 1,000 years in the future, right? When Jesus Christ is merged with Elon Musk somehow, and now we're praying to Elon Musk because this has already happened with in Christianity. Like 2,000 years of Christianity, you can dissect it and see how it has changed. During all that time, like it's not like it doesn't matter that it's still here. It has changed, and it's gonna keep changing. If he wants to survive.
Longest I'm gonna have to kind of push back a little bit on that, and that's just because we'll see that happen with just about everything throughout society. If we try to use the time argument, because like in 2,000 years from now, we could have somebody who actually started a Harry Potter cult and all that stuff. And so like
there's the Church of the Force right now.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like we can sit there and say that within the future, people are going to misconstrue and do all this stuff, but they do that with everything. Yeah. I mean, 1984 hasn't been out for all that long, and people still don't understand 1984, and they still use it in everyday language in a way that is misconstruing it.
I know the point. That's not the point. The point is that this conversation is like a ping pong match. It goes nowhere. Like it's back and forth. Like you can say, yeah, how about Shakespeare? How about Lord of the Rings? Yeah. And they're gonna reply to you that Christianity's been here for 2,000 years, and
you guys
that doesn't make it.
In his defense, he didn't say it. He didn't say that though.
He didn't say that.
I know, but it's kind of. I think it's kind of implying was what he's saying.
Hold on. Travis is trying to say something.
I like what you guys are talking about. It is off topic for what we are doing here today. But maybe we can play with it another day. I wanted to. I think we've exhausted the slavery topic today. So what I'm going to do is. Say thank you to everyone who joined us today for the live stream. We have all of these different kinds of off-air voice channels that we're all going to go to after this and have some conversations. Everyone on YouTube, we hope you come and join us on Discord, and welcome as well to all of our new Discord subs today. Glad to have so many new voices here, and thank you for all the good faith, helpful interactions between atheists and theists today. It's hard to find that around the world, so we're trying to provide a platform where that can happen. Make sure all of
just to help bolster that. I was one of those people who were in the YouTube live chat there and joined the Discord, and then now I'm here. So cool. If you want to get in on these conversations, go ahead and do that, guys.
Right on. Well, welcome, King, and I'm glad you're here. And everyone, invite your friends. Everyone's welcome here. The only requirements are that you engage in good faith, helpful discourse, whether you're engaging in our voice chats or in the Pangburn Library, which is our ongoing text chat section that everyone's allowed to contribute to. Drop your links, share your own YouTube channel links, like whatever you guys want to do, and don't ever hesitate to reach out to me if you want help promoting your intellectual content. It doesn't bother me when people reach out. Sometimes I can't promote your content for whatever reason, but usually I can or help in some way. So feel free to reach out and do that. We're gonna shut things down, and I'll see you guys down in the off-air channels and everyone on YouTube.
I hope you stay, because I do want to continue this.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'll hang out for a little bit.
The tavern's always a hot place to hang out if you're just looking for a general chat. But if you want something more specific, like the topics we're discussing right now, you might want to head down to the philosophy tab. But thanks everyone, and we'll catch you next time.